Okay, we are recording to the cloud and we are live on the YouTube channel. So you're good to go, Ricky.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Zoning Commission meeting. I am Vice Chair Richard Jowdy. I'm calling the meeting to order on June 9th at 7:31 p.m. Chairman Haddad is on call out of town and he might not be zooming in tonight. At this time, I'd like to take a roll call. Commissioner Almeida.
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Fay.
Here.
Is there a delay or we okay?
No, she's here. She's here.
Okay.
I sit here,
All right.
sorry.
And Ted Haddad is out of town. He may come, but he's absent as of now. Commissioner Helinski.
Here.
Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
Commissioner Hawley's here.
Yes, he's here.
Okay. All right. James Kelly, I believe he's absent. We had word that he's absent.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Mazai.
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Henry.
Here.
Commissioner Mashan.
Here.
Commissioner Nizam.
I don't see
Absent.
him on. No, I don't see.
Right. Okay. All right. Commissioner Melillo.
Here.
And I am Vice Chair Richard Jowdy, and I am here. Okay. Okay. Because of Commissioner Haddad not being here, and he might not be zooming in, I'd like to ask Commissioner Melillo if he would like to chair this evening. Commissioner Little has a major experience, been a chairman for a long time, and due to the circumstances, I think he'll be able to chair this meeting very well. I need a motion on the floor for that.
I'll motion.
And a second.
Don't move.
Right. Okay. So Mike Massey, motion, and Angie seconded.
Okay, got it.
Okay. We'll just do a yes and no, a verbal on this. Is that good?
Commissioner Jowdy, just for the record, just under discussion, just to formalize that it would be for the items on tonight's meeting agenda only.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put that in. All right. So we have a motion on the floor to have Chairman Melillo chair the meeting just for tonight's agenda. We have a motion and a second. Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 And no?
Okay.
Okay, we're all set.
Thank you, Commissioner Jowdy. At this time,
Thank
I'd like
you.
to recognize Ms. Calitro so she can give the notification for the electronic meeting.
Thank you, Acting Chair Melillo. So I just wanted to go over on his behalf the meeting instructions. Obviously tonight we are holding this meeting as a virtual meeting on Zoom. The instructions to access the meeting and watch on live stream on the Danbury, Connecticut P&Z YouTube channel can be found on the agenda, which is on the Zoning Commission homepage of the city's website. We are live streaming, and as I indicated before, recording as required, and the recording will be posted on the city's website. The agenda will follow the normal procedures and standard practice. We ask that commissioners use the raise hand function. You've all been through that. If you want to talk, I'll be able to see you and recognize you during the course of the regular meeting. If there are any questions or comments on the agenda that were submitted to me before the meeting, we'll read them in at the appropriate time and or ask the person, if I see that they're on, to enter those comments. For the public, after the applicant's presentation in the public hearing portion of the meeting, and after the commissioners have asked their questions, I'll open the meeting The chair will open the meeting for public comment. For those wishing to speak in favor or against, we're going to ask that you please use the raise hand function. If you're in the Zoom meeting, if you're on a telephone line and not zooming in, you'll just at the appropriate time have to scream out and I'll recognize you. With respect to text that was on the agenda, just because you may not have indicated to me you want to speak, this is a public hearing as required by law. We will let everybody who wants to speak. It doesn't preclude anyone from speaking just because you have not notified me. I could tell you right now, there's 36 people on this meeting, so it may take me, since I am the staff to the zoning commission, like Joanne, I'm also the host of the meeting. So it may take me a minute to make sure I see everybody's hand raised or to recognize you, but we will ensure that that happens. And I'll ask the acting chair to take any votes tonight by roll call so that Joanne can record the minutes. Okay, all set, Rob.
Okay, thank you. We do have on the agenda the acceptance of the minutes for the June 23rd, 2020 meeting. I'm sorry, our next regular meeting is scheduled for June 23rd, 2020. And we have acceptance of the minutes for the May 12th, 2020 meeting. At this time, I'll entertain a motion on accepting the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by
I think that was Candace.
Candace.
seconded by, do we have a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Jowdy, thirded by a couple others there. Any discussion, modifications, alterations? All those in favor of accepting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Joanne, let the record reflect that the motion carried unanimously. I'm also going to seat alternate Commissioner Henry for Commissioner Haddad and alternate Commissioner Marchand for Commissioner Kelly for all items on the agenda this evening. Our first item is the public hearing. This is the petition of SC Ridge Owner LLC for a zone change from IL 40 to PND and approval of master plan 100 Reserve Road, lot number C16022. Sharon, we normally have a legal notice to read. Is there no legal notice for a Zoom meeting?
No, so as required under the executive order, the legal notice was delivered to the town clerk's office.
May 26th.
May 26th. I can read it for you if you'll indulge me for a second. Notice applications to be heard by the zoning commission at a public hearing in a web-based meeting hosted on Zoom, June 9th. Agenda to be posted will include instructions to access the Zoom meeting and application materials. Public hearings pursuant to Executive Order 7I, Section 19C. Notice is hereby given that the following petitions will be heard. 1, petition of SC Ridge Owner LLC for a zone change from IL 40 to PND and approval of the master plan 100 Reserve Road, C16022. I'm going to continue to read them all at once if that's okay with you.
That's
Okay.
fine.
2, application of Fast Lane Auto Repair LLC / Payne Road Investments LLC, 60 Payne Road, N12001 for a certificate of location approval for a motor vehicle general repairs license in the IG80 zone. Number 3, petition by D&B Wellness to amend sections 3C4, 5A, 2B, 5A5, 5B, 2B, 5B5 of the zoning regulations, medical marijuana dispensaries as special exception in the CG20 and CA80 zone. Number 4, application of Ingersoll Auto of Danbury, 3 and 5 to 7 Morgan Avenue, K11046 and K12165 for a certificate of location approval for a motor vehicle general repairs license in the IL 40/CG20 zones. Theodore J. Haddad Jr. Chairman. And that was received stamped in by the town clerk as required May 26, 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Calitro. To expedite things, I'm going to go ahead and just read the staff report and the planning commission recommendation into the record. Bear with me as the report is a little bit lengthy, but as you know, we do have to, under statutes, read the entire report. So, City of Danbury Planning and Zoning Department to City of Danbury Planning Commission, City of Danbury Zoning Commission, from Sharon B. Calitro, AICP Planning Director, dated May 28th, 2020, regarding the Summit at Danbury petition to change official zoning map from light industrial IL 40 to Planned Neighborhood Development PND, approval of master plan, SC Ridge Owner LLC, tax assessor lot number C16022. We have received a petition to change the official zoning map for the above referenced parcel from IL 40 to PND and approve the commensurate master plan. The address of the site is 100 Reserve Road. Justification for the petition to rezone the site and approve the master plan is provided in a letter from Thomas W. Beecher, Petitioner's Counsel, dated March 11, 2020. Also, as stated on page 16 of the master plan, the building is obsolete with respect to leasing it up as 100% office space. In addition, it would not be in harmony with the surrounding residential neighborhoods to fully convert this building and the site to all classic industrial uses allowed in the IL 40 zone, such as, for example, manufacturing facilities and/or contractors' yards. Section 4H of the zoning regulations contains the PND zoning regulations. The section of the regulations was amended in 2019 to provide for the adaptive reuse or retrofitting of existing obsolete or underutilized commercial buildings on large sites. Site location and information. The existing IL 40 zone site is 99.529 acres in size and identified as tax assessor lot number C16022. In 2015, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted a variance to Garrett Danbury LLC, predecessor entitled to the petitioner, to allow the submission of a petition to amend the official zoning map to PND for a site below the 100-acre minimum. The variance is recorded in volume 2332 at page 236 to 237 on the Danbury land records. There is an existing structure on the site certified at 1,267,186 square feet in size with an 800,000 square foot, 2,443 space parking garage structure. A variance was granted in 1977 to allow a building height of 70 feet above grade. The site has frontage on Sawmill Road, an arterial public road. However, vehicular access to the existing structure is over 2 private roadways within the reserve. The subject property has legal access rights to use the reserve and woodland roads in accordance with the reciprocal easement agreement and rights set forth in the master declaration for the reserve. The site also has frontage on Reserve Road and Woodland Road, but neither are public roadways. The site contains several utility easements to serve both the existing structure as well as off-site uses, including easements for storm drainage, sanitary sewer, water, electric, and tel data. The regional Algonquin gas transmission main bisects the northern portion of the site. Located on the west side of Danbury and within the West Side District Plan of the 2013 Plan of Conservation and Development, the site is surrounded by lands of the reserve, all zone PND, and in various stages of development in accordance with approved plans. There are both existing wetlands and steep slopes or areas in excess of 25% grade on site as identified in figures 4, 7, and 10 of the proposed master plan. The site is within the Lake Kenosha Class 2 Public Water Supply Watershed Protection Zone. It appears to contain one or more of the characteristics required for designation as being environmentally sensitive. PND regulations. General Development Principles Sections 4H2A. The proposed overall layout of the site appears generally consistent with the noted PND zone principles as related to the retrofitting of an existing building with a complementary mix of uses. The existing building will contain the mix of residential and non-residential uses. An office and warehouse facility is proposed on the periphery of the site with a direct driveway connection into Sawmill Road. Office use is a permitted use in the IL 40 zone, and a warehouse facility is a use allowed by special exception. The residential units proposed within the existing structure are identified as being all apartments comprised of a mix of efficiencies, 1- and 2-bedroom units. There are no 3-bedroom units proposed. Neighborhood retail and service uses are also proposed on floors other than the ground floor, which is permitted with zoning commission approval. Other uses include, but are not limited to, offices, medical offices, a conference center, a catering facility, and a nursery school. Development Standards Section 4H2B. The PND zone regulations provide development standards in sections 4H2B1, the site size that with the variance meets the minimum size requirements. The site is under single ownership. Based on the site acreage, section 4H2B2 provides for a total maximum residential density of 433 dwelling units. This does not include any accommodation for assisted living, congregate care, or continuing care senior housing. Proposed density in the master plan document is 404 dwelling units, although several accompanying documents reference a dwelling unit count of 414. With 404 dwelling units as proposed, the master plan also complies with the minimum density requirement of 250 dwelling units. The maximum non-residential development would be capped at 433,538 square feet were it not for the request to apply the provisions of subsection A of sections 4H2B2. Application of this subsection allows the zoning commission under certain conditions to increase the non-residential building floor area to a maximum of 75% of the existing building gross floor area, or in this case, to 950,389 square feet. In the master plan document, the petitioner contends there is justification to increase the non-residential square footage and that limiting such non-residential square footage to an FAR of 0.1 would render the redevelopment of the building as proposed economically unviable. It appears conditions to allow the increase in the non-residential square footage in subsection A1(8) are met. The minimum amount of common recreation facilities and open space, including usable open space, is 33% of the gross site acreage, or for this site, 32.8 acres. Figure 9 of the master plan identifies 43.75 acres of usable and common open space. Approximately 4.6 acres of the common space must be usable open space as defined in the regulations. The master plan should more clearly specify what facilities, indoors and outdoors, or areas comprise of usable open space. The reference to a pool area in the master plan is ambiguous, as no facility is shown in the area noted as community facilities. Community facility uses are required to be no more than 10% of the gross acreage of the site. While the actual square footage of proposed community facilities as defined in the regulations has not been provided, it does appear likely that such uses would not exceed this limit. Community facility uses in the P&D regulations include, but are not limited to, community centers, nursery schools, facilities for the instruction in music, crafts, and the performing arts, daycare centers, churches, or other places of worship, and police stations. The master plan indicates that there are 3 phases of development. Phase 1 provides for the retrofit of the existing building with the residential units and a mix of non-residential uses per sections 4H2B3B13 of the zoning regulations. Phase 2 consists of development of a 196,650 square foot warehouse and office building along Sawmill Road. Phase 3 provides for additional parking east of the main building. To help understand the proposed uses per floor as shown on the individual figures in the master plan, staff has prepared the attached table that identifies proposed uses by square footage by floor. The petitioner should provide a written clarification of the uses within each category to ensure compliance with the uses permitted in sections 4H2B3 of the zoning regulations. Staff notes that there are some discrepancies in square footages on different figures in the master plan. The attached table reflects clarification of the square footages as discussed with the petitioner's counsel during the review process. Where a proposed use does not correlate with a use identified in the regulations, but may be considered a use of a similar kind and character, the zoning commission may permit such use upon approval of the master plan. This would be the case, for instance, for a warehouse and office facility proposed in phase 2, which could be considered similar to the uses listed in sections 4H2B3B3 and being a non-residential use not serving the immediate needs of the residential development. The same would apply to the catering facility in the existing building. Master Plan Section 4H3. A master plan is required to be submitted with the petition to amend the official zoning map. Much of the information required is provided in the master plan document and supplemental traffic access and impact study and associated exhibits. The petitioner contends there is no need for mitigation or modifications to traffic controls or markings, nor any modifications to existing direct access ways into the site. No off-site road improvements are proposed. The traffic access and impact study indicates that area intersection levels of services, LOS, will improve or stay relatively the same after development as compared to the no-build condition due to the reconfiguration of the type of uses within the building and on the site. Woodland Road and the site access road is expected to drop a LOS from LOSB to LOSC during the PM peak hour. The new access driveway for the warehouse and office facility onto Sawmill Road in phase 2 is expected to operate at a LOSA in the AM peak and a LOSB in the PM peak hours. The traffic study has been forwarded to the city traffic engineer for review. The petitioner in Exhibit H of the master plan contends redevelopment as planned in the master plan is fiscally positive for the city. This analysis assumed a residential density of 414 units, higher than proposed in the body of the master plan, and a commercial revitalization under the existing tax assessment. The petitioner in Exhibit 1 of the master plan estimates that between 11 and 17 school children can be expected for the proposed residential component and contends there will be sufficient tax revenues generated to offset costs. Both the fiscal and school analysis were conducted in early fall 2019 and, based on that point in time, may have appeared to be appropriate. However, it is recognized that the Danbury School District experienced a surprising and significant increase in enrollment in the late months of 2019, necessitating updated enrollment projections, facility planning, and education spending allocations by the city. As such, the applicant should revise the analysis to account for current enrollment forecasts and fiscal conditions. See below for discussion pursuant to sections 4H3C, action on petitions. Sections 4H4, final site plans. No final site plans have been submitted, so compliance with the section is not appropriate at this time. Section 4H5, specific standards. As previously indicated, there is a height variance that allowed the existing structure to be 70 feet in height. New structures will be required to comply with height limitations in subsection A. Subsection B describes additional perimeter design standards, screening, and increased setbacks for uses in the property edge to minimize detrimental effects on surrounding properties. The master plan does not specify how the perimeter, particularly phase 2 development along the public road, will be treated in terms of general landscaping. The master plan cites that this will be addressed with the future submission of site plans. The reference figure 3 and exhibit J do not identify landscape materials or required street tree plantings. The master plan should, at a minimum, describe how this area of the site will be developed to ensure that the proposed warehouse and office use will be screened from view from residences across Sawmill Road. Building spacing standards in subsection C do not appear to apply, as the existing structure will be retrofit and the proposed structure in phase 2 is located some 360 feet therefrom. Future site plans will be required to provide walkways at appropriate locations for use by residents and building occupants. The master plan does not address the location of required street trees per subsection D. Compliance with this standard will be addressed at a time of final site plan approval. Subsection E, regarding the provision of affordable housing, does not apply. Subsection F provides open space and environmental design standards. Most are applicable and appropriate at the time of final site plan approval. However, as noted above, there is a requirement for usable open space per dwelling unit. This requirement of 500 square feet per dwelling unit is included in the total amount of open space enumerated in figure 9. For the proposed 404 dwelling units, a total of 4.6 acres of open space must be usable. In its review of the master plan, the Zoning Commission may require that significant landscape features be preserved as part of common open space and integrated with the environmental characteristics of the site. The regulations indicate that common open space areas shall not be subject to excessive grading and clearing except as necessary to provide usable open space. Subsection G, regarding a property owners association, may apply when and if another entity proposes to build in the warehouse, an office facility, or residential apartment component. At that time, or any other point in time when the land or uses are not under control, the petitioner required association documents must be filed on the Danbury Land Records. Subsection H provides standards for determining required parking and allows shared parking. It also addresses use of existing garage spaces in a retrofit scenario. Should the PND be approved, a parking analysis for all the uses will be required during final site plan review. There are 2,443 existing parking spaces in the garage. Additional parking is proposed in phase 3. Subsection I requires the PND to have direct access to an arterial street. The PND has frontage on Sawmill Road. No road improvements are proposed for utilization of the existing structures in mixed-use building or the phase 2 warehouse and office facility. New streets and sidewalks must meet the requirements of this subsection. Subsection J regulates signage and is more appropriately determined at the time of final site plan approval. All uses on the site are proposed to be served by municipal sewer and water in accordance with subsection K. The master plan does not indicate any historic or archaeological sites in the property per subsection L. The building, while iconic in terms of its design, is not historic. Subsection M addresses the compliance with EIC regulations. The master plan indicates that the field investigations were conducted in 2018. The summary indicates a number of on-site wetland systems. There is also a vernal pool on site adjacent to the Algonquin gas transmission easement. It does not appear that significant new construction will occur in the area surrounding the existing structure. Therefore, minimal wetland impacts can be expected in this area. Since each phase will require approved final site plans, if there is any activity adjacent to the existing building that would impact wetlands, appropriate approvals will be required. Wetland impacts can be expected in for development in phases 2 and 3. Again, final site plans will be reviewed and approved by the EIC as may be required. Exhibit L provides general recommendations for development 2, as stated by the petitioner's wetland consultant. Protect and enhance the vernal pool and wetland areas, as no specific site plans were reviewed. Compliance with the POCD. Rezoning of the site to a PND and redevelopment as envisioned in the master plan is consistent with vision statement number 3 of the 2013 POCD, which states that the west side would be the focus of future development in the city, hosting new growth industries and creatively designed neighborhoods. Retrofitting this large building for a variety of uses, including opportunities to live, work, and play, can result in a creatively designed neighborhood. The master plan also provides for a new warehouse and office facility on land at the periphery of the site with access onto an arterial street connecting directly to I-84. The petition may also be considered consistent with several goals, policies, and recommendations within the POCD and the Land Development Plan, West Side District Plan, Economic Development Plan, Environmental Protection Plan, and Housing Plan sections. The Land Development Plan section encourages the renovation of structures and the continued permitting of planned unit developments like the PND as a floating zone in the urban development areas, page 14. The phase 2 use will maintain a light industrial use in the site, although the site would be zoned PND, page 15. The master plan uses envisioned on the site also meets the goal of the West Side Plan, and retrofitting the structure provides an opportunity to manage future growth, page 23. In terms of compliance with the Economic Development Plan section, rezoning to the PND would allow another form of neo-traditional development in the west side area, as well as provide for a new light industrial use of the site. New uses are proposed to complement existing uses in the existing structure. The warehouse and office facility provides for almost 200,000 square feet of new industrial use. In compliance with Section 5, the Environmental Protection Plan, additional reviews and approvals by regulating bodies and adherence to applicable environmental regulations are designed to ensure protection of the natural environment, pages 29 to 30. Finally, the housing plan of the POCD recommends promotion of creative design and cost-effective housing development. The Commission may reasonably conclude that retrofitting this building for the inclusion of apartments as an iconic former office structure is both creative and cost-effective, page 35. It should also be noted that the petition is inconsistent with the Land Development Plan map of the POCD. This map has not been revised since 2002 and does not reflect the surrounding PND zone. While the master plan includes development of a use or uses that is or are allowed in the IL-40 zone, rezoning will result in the loss of almost 100 acres of IL-40 zoned land. Criteria for approval. Sections 4H3C of the zoning regulations provides that the Zoning Commission in its review of a petition shall determine the suitability of the site for a PND development as specified in the master plan and other documents and evidence submitted as part of the petition, and may approve a petition upon finding suitability for the following reasons. 1, the proposed development is consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development and the comprehensive planning program on which it is based. Based on the above, the Commission may find it reasonable to conclude that the proposed master plan is consistent with the City of Danbury Plan of Conservation and Development. 2, environmentally sensitive areas are adequately protected. Environmentally sensitive areas have been mapped by the petitioner as part of the master plan analysis and will be evaluated by the EIC prior to final site plan approval for each phase of development. The site is located within the Lake Kenosha 2 Public Water Supply Watershed Protection Zone. It contains features which would classify it as environmentally sensitive. The site does contain wetlands and a vernal pool. The extent to which any additional construction in the site will impact the environmentally sensitive areas is more appropriately determined during and or prior to the detailed site plan review phase. The vernal pool area is not proposed to be impacted by future phases as it is located in the area of the gas transmission main easement. Given that the building exists, it is reasonable to focus on implementing additional protection measures on other land proposed for development. Stormwater management measures will have to sufficiently address protection of natural environmental resources. 3, the proposed development is in substantial harmony with the surrounding area. Reuse of the existing building will limit impact to the surrounding area. The proposed Phase 2 warehouse and office facility will constitute a new use along Sawmill Road. This roadway has a mix of both residential and non-residential uses, with several parcels in the IL40 zone and containing an IL40 zone use. The proposed warehouse and office use is similar in kind and character to other industrial uses further south. Additional buffers should be considered when detailed Phase 2 plans are prepared and considered for final site plan approval. Open space will remain as required upon completion of all phases. 4, existing streets, including proposed street improvements and proposed streets proving access to the site, are adequate to support anticipated traffic volumes at acceptable levels of service. Sections 4H5I of the zoning regulations requires that access to the site be designed in a manner adequate to accommodate projected traffic. The private roadways providing access to the existing building appear adequate to serve the needs of the mix of uses. Approvals from the Office of the State Traffic Administration will be required for the warehouse and office facility proposed at over 100,000 square feet in size. Sawmill Road is an arterial roadway. The City of Danbury will continue to ensure that internal streets and sidewalks are developed in accordance with all required city regulations and policies, and that sidewalk connections to adjacent P&D lands are provided. 5, existing and proposed public facilities are adequate to serve the proposed development. The only public facility proposed as part of the master plan is a police substation to be constructed by the petitioner on the ground floor of the existing structure. 6, municipal sewer and water service adequate to serve the proposed and P&D can be provided. The existing structure is served by public water and sewer services. Any extensions thereof for additional service to the existing building or to the new warehouse and office facility will be designed to conform with city requirements, standards, and specifications. Conclusion. To amend the official zoning map for this site from IL40 to P&D and approve the master plan, the commissioner must consider the suitability of the site for P&D development as specified in the master plan and other supporting documents, and find development as proposed is consistent with the POCD and will not negatively impact the public health, welfare, and safety. This IL40 zone parcel sits surrounded by other P&D zoned lands. The existing structure is unique in its design and size. Future development of this site and/or reuse of the existing 1,267,186 square foot structure solely for permitted and special exception IL40 zone uses may be questionable given today's business climate. Adaptively reusing the building on the site for a mix of complementary uses has several economic, social, and environmental advantages. The Commission may reasonably conclude that this existing structure offers a unique opportunity to create a new form of a community in Danbury, and perhaps based on the size of the structure within the state of Connecticut, Phase 2 development of a large warehouse and office facility also maintains an industrial use on the site. And the Planning Commission recommendation, City of Danbury Planning Commission dated June 3rd, 2020, to Theodore J. Haddad Jr., Chairman, Danbury Commission, Danbury Zoning Commission, from Arnold B. Finaldi Jr., Chairman, Danbury Planning Commission, regarding 8-3A referral petition of SC Ridge Owner LLC for a zone change from IL40 to PND and approval of Master Plan 100 Reserve Road, Tax Assessor Lot C16022. At the web-based Zoom meeting held on June 3rd, 2020, the City of Danbury Planning Commission voted to give the above reference petition a positive recommendation, having found the site is suitable for a PND zoning designation as specified in the proposed master plan for the following reasons. The proposed development is consistent with the goals, policies, and recommendations of the Plan of Conservation and Development and the comprehensive planning program on which it is based, as noted in the staff report dated May 28, 2020. 2, environmentally sensitive areas are adequately protected. 3, the proposed development is in substantial harmony with the surrounding area. 4, existing streets, including proposed street improvements and proposed streets providing access to the site, are adequate to support anticipated traffic volumes at acceptable levels of service. 5, existing and proposed public facilities are adequate to serve the proposed development. 6, municipal sewer and water service adequate to serve the proposed P&D can be provided. The motion to give this a positive recommendation was made by Mr. Urice, seconded by Mrs. Hofstetter, and passed unanimously by roll call vote with ayes from Mr. Chiocchio, Mrs. Hofstetter, Mr. Salvain, Mr. Urice, and Chairman Finaldi. Finally, I'm going to note that this was submitted to Westcog for their recommendation, and they responded that this is of local interest with minimal intermunicipal impact, which is their standard reply. So with that, I will ask, is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
I would like to, Mr. Chairman.
Attorney Beecher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess you're relieved that someone else will speak for a little while. Nicely done. For the record, my name's Tom Beecher, and I represent SC Ridge Owner LLC, which is the applicant and the owner of the former Union Carbide building and property. It's now called the Summit. Here with us this evening are Felix Charney, who's a partner in SC Ridge and Summit Development Company. Tony Rizzo Jr., who's on the development team. Mike Basile, who's the project manager. Eric Lindquist is the project engineer from Ty and Bond. We also have Michael Galante, who's our traffic expert. And we have Frank Fish, Tina Lund, and Noah Levine from BFJ Planning, who are the authors of our fiscal analysis and school reports. And last, but certainly not least, we have Matthew Popp, a professional wetland scientist from Environmental Land Solutions. We're all here this evening pursuant to our application for a zone change from IL 40 to the Planned Neighborhood Development, or PND zone, and for approval of our master plan to retrofit and develop this 1.2 million square foot building and this 99.5 acre property. We just heard the planning director's excellent report, which is very detailed, and she incorporates a lot from our master plan document. So I don't want to go through and recite exactly what we said or what she said we said. I will certainly expand upon what has been said, and we intend to highlight a lot of important things for this master plan and the zone change. We have filed and presented to you, and what that entails is the culmination of many meetings and discussions that we've had with Sharon, as well as Jennifer Eminger and Attorney Robin Edwards and other city officials. And we thank all of them for their time and input in getting this project to the point of where we've presented it to you. As you can see from everything that we presented, there was a lot of hard work and there was a lot of planning to finalize what we have filed with you. Many of you were commissioners when we came in for, and this commission granted, a change to the PND regulations, which allowed an adaptive reuse project for a building of this magnitude in the PND. Many of you had the opportunity to visit the building and you've seen its promise for yourself. Let me start with some history of the building and the property, which establishes the background of why we are here tonight. Again, many of you have heard this before, but it is important background as to why we have proposed this master plan. Eric, can you put up slide number 1, please? This property and this building is the former Union Carbide headquarters. As I said, the building itself is 1.2 million square feet. Plus, there's an 800,000 square foot parking structure that has just under 2,500 parking spaces. The building has 5 floors, and as you can see, it has 15 pods or legs connected to the main core structure. There are 9 pods on the east side, which is closest to us at the bottom of the screen. And that is the side of the building, as you're going to see, and as you've read in our master plan, that's the business or non-residential side of the building. On the other side, on the west side, are the 6 pods that will be residential in use on that side of the building. Back in 1982, Union Carbide completed this building, and approximately 3,000 people worked there in 1983. At the time, Union Carbide was the largest employer in the city of Danbury. The unique architecture of this building was designed, as you can see, with those 15 pods off of the main core of the building to allow 2,300 offices to all have an exterior view of this forested property, as you can see right in front of you. At the time, the property was 674 acres. Eric, can we go to number 2, please? Subsequently, approximately 574 acres were sold off, and most of that, 546 acres of that, became the reserve, a planned neighborhood development pursuant to these PND regulations. This particular photo is an aerial looking south. Sawmill Road is on your right. The boundary line is not entirely accurate. It's illustrative, but it shows how our property is in fact the donut hole in the middle of all the rest of the property surrounding our property, which is already PND. And specifically, it shows Abbey Woods, Toll Brothers, Rivington, the Mews, the Hills, the Ridge, and Crown Point in the reserve, and that is what surrounds our property. The one and only property in the city of Danbury that has ever been zoned PND and has a master plan is the reserve. And that was approved back in 2002. And it's always completely surrounded this particular piece of property. It is rare that a single property that is both 100 acres or more and is all in one ownership would come along and seek to be zoned PND. After the Bhopal explosion, Union Carbide was in financial trouble and it sold this building but retained a 20-year lease. It was transitioned into being known as the corporate center in 1992. Thereafter, it was sold to Grubb & Ellis in 2007, and then resold to Jared Danbury LLC or Matrix Realty in 2009. The Matrix Center tried and tried, but could not fully lease up this building. And in fact, large tenants began to leave for various reasons. Large tenants like Praxair and Boehringer left. Subsequently, this property went further downhill and then it went into receivership. It is now 2019. And the unfortunate lessons learned through these 25 years of various transitions are that a single tenant Fortune 500 corporate headquarters on large properties are a definite thing of the past. Look, for example, at GE vacating the Fairfield campus in Connecticut. Number 2, there simply is not sufficient or sustainable market to be able to fully lease up 1.2 million square feet of Class A office space. And now with this recent COVID-19 pandemic, where many people have been working from home, need for a lot of office space will likely go down even more as companies discover that in fact it's perfectly fine for employees to work remotely or to rotate in and out. This building could just never get to the point of being close to fully utilized and leased out. And it won't if everything stays the same. Something different has to be done with this building and this property. Something sustainable so that the building does not continue in a downward spiral and ultimately begin to physically deteriorate. So here we are before you with a detailed master plan to make something new and positive happen. When all of you act as a zoning commission, you certainly also look at thoughtful planning as part of your review of a zone change. No plan for this property should include demolition of this building. No plan for this site should encourage full-blown industrial uses for this building on this site, in this location, in the donut hole, surrounded by residential uses. So a plan must include adaptively reusing this building. This master plan achieved that as concluded by the planning director. Last summer, we spent 2 nights talking with you about adaptive reuse and retrofitting large buildings like this one, when this commission approved the changes to the PND regulations to accommodate retrofitting large buildings like this. I'm not going to go into everything we talked about last summer, but some of the highlights of adaptive reuse as a planning concept are reusing and reimagining an existing building for a purpose or purposes that the building was not originally built for. It is the repurposing and rejuvenation of obsolete buildings. It preserves an architecturally significant building such as this one. Adaptive reuse is a tool to avoid demolition, extensive site disturbance that would go with it or redevelopment, or environmental impacts from demolition or site redevelopment, and it avoids urban sprawl. Look at the sheer magnitude of this single structure compared to the other buildings surrounding it in this photo. The PND regulation amendment that you passed certainly was adopted with this building in mind. For a whole host of reasons, if this very large building can be reused and retrofitted, it is a form of urban recycling that we should all embrace. We all had conversations about, well, why can't this building be all offices like it once was? Or why can't it be a big school? Or why can't it be a large hotel? The short answer is that the idea failed, or it cannot work, or it's just not financially viable for my client or for the city of Danbury. Again, a lot of hard work and study went into finalizing this master plan for this building on this site. Our master plan will repurpose this building in a new way that has in fact worked elsewhere. Let me show you a couple of examples of similar adaptive reuse projects with a mix of residential and commercial space that were completed successfully or are in progress. Finalizing this master. This particular site is in Norwalk. This was a 600,000 square foot industrial manufacturing building owned by Wetlands Systems and United Technologies. Unfortunately, operations were moved out of state, and that move left the site underutilized. It's now being transformed into Norden Park, which is a mix of office space and apartments. Some of the work is completed. There's a data center and there's apartment buildings, but it's still a work in progress. Next one, Eric. In Chappaqua, New York, the former Reader's Digest campus is located on 114 acres. It was once a 700,000 square foot single tenant office property like the Union Carbide property. The internet age contributed to the demise of the iconic Reader's Digest publication, leading to layoffs and the need to reinvent this campus. Next one, please. This property is now known as Chappaqua Crossing. It's a mixed-use neighborhood with a mix of residences and retail and commercial, including a Whole Foods, which is the anchor, Chase Bank, a Lifetime Fitness Center, a Regional Arts Center, and a 500,000 square foot medical and office complex. Very similar to what we're proposing. These two projects demonstrate that integrated mixes of residential, offices, businesses, and retail works in adaptive reuse projects. In addition, Felix Charney and Summit Development are in fact the developers of both the Norden Park adaptive reuse project in Norwalk and the Chappaqua Crossings project on the former Reader's Digest campus. Can we go back to the second slide, please, Eric? So this is the neighborhood we're in, and we'd like to join this neighborhood as a PND. It makes sense for Danbury and it makes sense for us. We are going to complement the surrounding PND. We are not conflicting with the type of PND that the reserve is. The reserve is a conventional PND. The reserve is predominantly townhouses and other homes with some neighborhood commercial. Yet to be built, but it will have some. The Summit, on the other hand, would be the adaptive reuse, retrofitted alternative PND with a balance away from being predominantly homes. As we've made clear, we are requesting that you allow us to use the adaptive reuse alternative of 75% non-residential. The Summit will have 404 apartments, but we'll also have a restaurant, retail, services, offices, a fitness center, medical offices, event space, a conference center, business offices, and other non-residential uses available to everyone in this west side area of Danbury. It will be one PND surrounded by the other. the summit can be the hub. You will be able to walk on the sidewalk to connect to other roads from the summit and to the summit. We want people to walk on the sidewalks and come to the summit. But there's also plenty of parking if they need to drive to the summit. In addition to complementing rather than competing with the reserve, there's another significant justification for allowing the 75% non-residential space. If we were required to follow the standard PND requirements, the non-residential space for the entire site would be capped at just 433,538 square feet. As you know, and from the report that Mr. Melillo just read, the maximum number of residences that we can have is 433 residences. The apartments that we proposed average 1,222 square feet each. The end result of all those numbers would be that if you take the entire 1.2 million plus square feet of building, subtract out the conventional non-residential space that we could have, and then subtract out 433 apartments at that average size, there would still be over 20% of this building unused and left over. Stated a different way, if you take the building at over 1.2 million square feet and subtract the conventional amount of 433,538 square feet of non-residential space, you're left with 833,630 feet left over. You certainly don't want us to fill that with residents, nor do we. Commercial property values for tax assessment purposes are based in part upon gross rents. Maximizing the potential of a large property with a large building through this master plan is beneficial for everyone. The more space that is leased, the more taxes that the adaptive reuse and reimagination of this giant building with integrated mix of uses, fully leasing up this building is a solution. Lastly, this mix of uses, as we have said, is designed to be a marriage of uses that creates a vertical as well as a horizontal neighborhood that is the live, work, play, eat, and shop place to be. Without the 75% alternative that we've asked for, this building will fail again, as there will be no sensible business alternatives and no economically viable alternatives for this building. As the chairman of the Planning Commission said last week, Mr. Finale, who was in favor of this project, the COVID-19 pandemic may well lead to more of these types of projects with a mix of complementary uses joined into one particular property or retrofitted building. There has been a movement of folks away from the metropolitan New York area as a result of recent events. This project is now an even greater opportunity for people to come to the summit for this mix of uses all in one space. So let's talk about the specific mix of uses we've proposed here. Here you see a concept of the entry drive on the ground level with the marketplace, restaurant, and convenience store on your left and the main lobby on the right. The marketplace, this is the east side of the building. Over the right shoulder of the artist is the ground floor parking area conveniently located for these facilities. A portion of this ground floor is below grade. There are drive aisles on both sides of this central core of the building where you see the lobby entrance on the right. This is the drive aisle, and obviously there would be a similar driveway on the west side where we also would have a lobby entrance. And over on that side of the building, the Goddard School and some other businesses are located along that stretch. We have the next one, please, Eric. Here you see a picture of the lobby, and this is a very nice newly redone lobby. Again, it's in the center core section, and you are now looking back out across the way to what you saw in the rendering. You're looking at the future home of the marketplace if this project is approved. Now let's go inside the building, so to speak, floor by floor. These slides are going to show you are similar to figures 5A and 5 through 5E that we put in the master plan document. But they're going to give you some extra detail. They're going to show you the names of the facilities or some of the tenants. And we did submit these for the record this evening. On the west side of this ground floor, as I was just mentioning, down the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the Goddard School, which is closest to the parking. On the opposite end in purple, you'll see the central plant for the building, which houses the heat, water, and other utilities and operations for the entire building. In between, you have the police substation that my client built for the city after consulting with the city about that. And you will also see that there are businesses located there. You have light manufacturing or assembly by a lens company called Eskenbach. And Cadenza Innovations is an R&D business. And then there's some vacant space, which of course we hope to lease up as well. On the ground floor, there's truly no space in the pods themselves. You've got the 15 pods. All you're seeing there is the bases of the elevator shafts. There's really no facilities in the ground floor of those pods. Next one, please, Eric. On the mezzanine or first floor level, there's also a lobby area. In the middle center there, there's a fitness center which will expand into the purple space. And the fitness center will be open to the public. And then there will be offices and medical offices in the east side pods. Offices and retail are permitted uses in the PND. So while we're showing you some vacancies, I mean, there's always the possibility in any of these first two levels particularly, you may see some different uses such as retail or a beauty salon. We have a barber shop on the next floor. So, you know, you may see some changes of uses. By and large, though, I'm going to categorize them all in a minute. So on every floor on the east side, you'll see the non-residential uses, primarily offices. And on the west side, in the green, you'll see the residential side of the building. The majority of the central core usually is going to be non-residential, but you'll see, as on this floor, some of it is dedicated to residential space. For instance, there's co-working stations located in the center core on this particular floor. Second floor, Eric, please. On the second floor, there is the barber shop, a little tiny space right smack dab in the left of the middle core. And business offices, which will occupy approximately 1/2 of that central core, and the east side pods. Again, the west side pods and some of the central core will be residential. The third floor, please. On the third floor, in the center core, you will see the cafeteria. That's the entire red space there. And that cafeteria is and will be open just for residents of the building and business owners and tenants of the building. Pod N below it is the Sunset Ballroom, which is a banquet and event space area. If there was a large proposed event, and if it was during off hours, that cafeteria could potentially be used for an event as well. As for the rest of the third floor, again, on the east side, we have the business uses, and on the west side, we have the apartments. Fourth floor, please. On the fourth floor, you have conference rooms and a conference center and event space. All in the center there, rolling out into N pod at the lower end of the center core. As with the other floors, the outer east side pods are business pods. You'll see Danbury Medical is planning to go in the far left on the east side, and the west side would be residential again. The so-called common areas, which we've noted in figures 5A and 5E, and you could also see on the slides we just went through, and they're also shown on Sharon's chart attached to her report that was just read, are hallways and elevators. And all of that space is included in the non-residential space tally. So that's a lot of space that's earmarked as non-residential use, but it's not really physical use used by businesses other than to walk back and forth or travel back and forth to where they actually operate. The PND regulation allows residences, and the regulation requires non-residential uses as well. It allows neighborhood retail and services, and there is a list of those identified in the regulations. The PND regulation also permits you, as the zoning commission, to approve certain non-residential uses that are similar in kind and character to the ones that are actually itemized and listed. And it also allows the zoning commission to approve uses that are permitted, but are simply not directly related to serving the immediate needs of the residential development. In other words, there are uses that are permitted and they're recognized as uses that are allowed, but technically they don't constantly serve the immediate needs of the people who live there. We've described those uses in the master plan text and in figures 5A through 5E. And I also highlighted them in my recent letter to you. And when we show the uses outside of the itemized permitted uses, we're asking you to approve in addition to the business and office services. And again, those include Eskenbach, which is a lens company on the ground floor. That's a use that's just not serving the immediate needs of the people who live in the building. Likewise, the same for Cadenza Innovations. On the third floor, the Sunset Ballroom banquet and event space is a use that's similar in kind and character to hotels and conference centers in that category of uses, not directly serving the immediate needs of the residents. The cafeteria actually is a use directly related to serving the immediate needs of the residents. But it's a use that's similar in kind to the other uses that are listed. So we need to ask you to approve it as well. On the fourth floor, likewise, the conference center and the conference rooms are uses directly related to serving the immediate residents. Frankly, tenants are likely to use both the ballroom, the conference centers on occasion, but technically we need you to ask, we need you to approve it. All right, now on to this chart. This chart was part of my recent letter to you, but I've added information after further discussions with Sharon. She thought it would be helpful to you and ultimately to the department to have the total square footages of the three categories of uses floor by floor and for the building. So after each floor with the same breakout as in my original letter, I've added the totals for the floor. I've submitted this document for the record as well. And I'll just go through them. On this one, we just show now that the ground floor totals, you have neighborhood retail and service uses, which are allowed, marketplace and store, and the vacant space have that tally of 7563. The community facilities is a separate categorization of uses that are allowed. And so we have 14,778 square feet of community facilities on that particular floor, the Goddard School and the police substations. Then we show the non-residential uses which don't serve the immediate needs of the residents of the building. And that includes the Eskenbach and Cadenza space that I referenced earlier. So then if you scroll to the next page, Eric, please. For the first floor, you'll see the first floor totals. That first floor, it's all permitted uses, permitted neighborhood retail and service uses, and that's the fitness center, office space, and medical office space. The second floor is all permitted uses in the 129,654 square feet. The Guidepost Chapel is small and it's 1,218 square feet, and that's a community facility. Next page. And on the third floor, I went through that. You've got office and medical office, but you do have the cafeteria and Sunset Ballroom, which is a separate category at 42,367 square feet. Next page. And the fourth floor is broken out similarly. You've got 26,612 square feet of conference center and conference room event space that we ask you to approve. But there's your totals for the building. And we can interchange like uses for like uses within the building, but you'll see that the neighborhood retail and service uses, which are the primarily permitted uses, is the lion's share of the building. We have community facilities. Obviously, we don't have 433,000 square feet of community facilities, so we're not hitting the maximum. But and lastly, we have non-residential uses not serving the immediate needs of the residents of close to 96,000 square feet. So you've got 602,000 square feet, almost 603,000 square feet of the business uses within the building, the space that the businesses are using. Then you add to that all the common areas and the allocation of the lobby and facility space that I talked about. That adds up to 143,132 square feet. So then you get to our total non-residential space for the building of 745,863. But in discussing these figures with Sharon, she pointed out that the figure of 602,731 square feet of space actually dedicated to use by the tenants is only 47+% of the entire building, because the rest of the non-residential space is the hallways and the allocations. So really less than 50% of the building is actual true space. Lastly, we have the warehouse, office, and maintenance buildings on Sawmill Road, which is also a use not directly related to serving the immediate needs of the residents of the summit, and that needs to be approved by you as well. It is a use similar in character and kind to manufacturing and research and testing facilities, which are permitted. So we are asking you to approve the master plan, and specifically these totals for non-residential uses not serving the immediate needs of the residents, totaling approximately 96,000, plus some of the uses that I mentioned, which are similar to the ones that are permitted. Eric, can you unshare for a minute? As I said, this particular property is surrounded by property zone PND. For a number of important reasons, it's logical to approve this change of zone. We fully understand that there's a concern when changing a large property like this one from one zone to another, and particularly when you're losing some IL40 zone property in the project. It's very important to note, and the planning director pointed this out as well, that because we are seeking the 75% non-residential uses alternative PND, we're asking you to approve some very real IL40 uses as part of this master plan. The warehouse phase 2 project is 196,650 square feet of IL40 type use on Sawmill Road on 29 out of the 99.5 acres. This part of our property is near IL40 zone property just to the south. In the main large building, we have Eskenbach, the light manufacturer and assembly lens company that I mentioned. We have Cadenza Innovation, which is the research and development business. And of course, we are maintaining over 500,000 square feet of office and medical office space, which are all allowed uses in the IL40 zone. So with this 75% alternative PND, we are holding true to our IL40 roots, so to speak, while creating this little city within a city. Again, it's not enough to say, wouldn't it be nice if you could save the IL40 zone? Because with this 1.2 million square foot building, it just cannot work unless there's a mixed use program for it. Been there, done that. And to be clear, 75% figure of how much development can be non-residential is carved in stone. It's carved in stone today because it's based on the square footage of the existing building as it is today. That number of non-residential square footage can't grow. Even if we propose to build additional buildings 5 years from now, that number can't change. And the number of residential units can't go above 433 because that cap is tied to the size of our property. So this is it. You don't need to worry about sprawling development from this project. There may be changing in and out of uses, as I mentioned before, like a retail store replacing an office, but no grand expansions of square footage or expansion of residential units. And I think that's important to you, to us, to the city. Now, with respect to the apartments, there will be 404 apartments. A couple of our reports were done before we refined things for this master plan, so they used the figure of 414. The 404 apartments will be 80 efficiencies, 244 one-bedrooms, and 80 two-bedroom apartments. There will be no 3-bedroom apartments, and you can make that a condition of approval. The residential areas in this particular building will be separate. There will be a secure entry by key card or similar devices from both within the building as well as from the parking garage. There will be a resident swimming pool and recreation area on the west side of the building. That way they get the afternoon sun. Trails for everyone to enjoy as well. Eric, can we go to slide 15, please? Here you see 2 actual connected pods of the building, which would be converted to apartments with a nice pocket park below. And this area is what we've been referring to as pocket parks. The pocket parks are the areas between each of the pods and between the pods and the main building. Some of these have been improved, and plans are to improve a number of them into casual, usable open space areas for the enjoyment of both the business tenants and owners and the residents. Benches and picnic tables will be added in some locations, for instance. These areas are located on both the residential side of the building and on the business side of the building. And this is all shown in the revised figure 9 that we submitted to you last week. Eric's going to talk about open space in a few minutes, but we do exceed the minimum required amounts of both open space and usable open space. And additional amenities for the usable open space certainly is going to be part of our site plan submission if this master plan is approved. Let's talk about our fiscal analysis report. On page 1 of the fiscal analysis report, which is Exhibit H, it states that there was a high vacancy rate in this building previously. We all know that. And that underutilization of this property directly impacts taxes paid to the city. The report included information that it received directly from the Danbury tax assessor. The report concludes that once completed pursuant to our master plan, tax revenue will almost double over what it was during the last few years when this building was significantly underutilized. Based upon our school children analysis, which is Exhibit I, the fiscal analysis concludes that the net revenue to the city against projected costs is still close to $1 million annually on the plus side for the city of Danbury. School children analysis concluded that there would be likely 11 to 17 school-aged children coming out of these residences. This report was based on the then projection of 414. We're telling you we're doing 404 apartments. It does not change the report. It actually makes the report numbers slightly more conservative because they were based on a larger number of apartments. Despite the reported change to the school enrollment projections, our projected number of 11 to 17 students and our demographics for our projected residents for these apartments has not changed. This is not the type of housing that will cause a great influx of school children. 80% or 324 out of 404 of these apartments will be studio efficiencies or 1 bedrooms, and there will be no 3 bedrooms. But even if you're skeptical about the extent of the net positive revenue above costs of services for the city, or you're skeptical about the projected number of children, SC Ridge has agreed in writing with the city to pay an additional annual assessment to the city totaling close to $6 million over 10 years. That's an average of $600,000 per year in additional revenue to the city. There's 521,000 square feet of space dedicated to residential use. The fiscal analysis report that we submitted indicates that each home will have an average of 1.4 people. I always laugh when I see those, but 1.4 people. So if you look at this, by taking 521 square feet that used to be office space, you take 521 square feet of space away from office use, and then you only have 1.4 people per residence. We will be reducing the density of people on this site quite a bit. And as Mike Galante has reported to you, that also results in less traffic trips overall. But let me take the opportunity at this point to let Mike Galante give you his report. Mr. Chairman, after Mr. Galante, we'll then go to Eric Lindquist, our project engineer, then Mr. Charney, then Mr. Rizzo, and then I'll wrap things up for our side. Mike?
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive presentation so far. Mike Galante, Hardesty and Hanover were traffic consultants located in Fairfield, offices in New Haven, and offices down in Rye, New York. What I'd like to do for the next few minutes is give you kind of an overview of a very detailed traffic study that was prepared for the site, and take you through the steps that we went through to make conclusions about the traffic generation, potential impacts to the roads, and the final comment, which is no mitigation is needed. That's a term that we get to after a very extensive multi-step process. This graphic, which is from the report itself, is an aerial, obviously, that gives you the site location in the center, the key roads and intersections around the site itself. We focus on the 5 intersections, Sawmill Road, along Woodland Road to the south, Reserve Road to the north, and the intersections around it. Eric, you can go to the next slide. What we did is we conducted detailed turn movement counts, actually have counts with cameras and people on all of those intersections and corners last September. So it was pre-virus days, so the volumes were appropriate for the time that represented actual conditions. But we actually counted all of these intersections morning and afternoon during a typical week in September. Schools were open, there were no holidays, and weather was good. And what we did from that information is we collected the data, we compared it to other traffic volumes from other traffic reports from all the other developments surrounding this site itself, and also compared it to data from Connecticut DOT as far as nearby interchange 1, for example. And we identified the peak hours that we would focus on for the purpose of the traffic study, and that was 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning and 4:45 to 5:45 in the afternoon. Pretty standard commuter peak hour conditions. Traffic volumes, Sawmill Road actually had the highest volume in the area around the site itself with 700 vehicles. Other roads, Reserve or Woodland and so on, have volumes from anywhere from 2 to just about 400 vehicles. These are two-way volumes, one peak hour, morning and afternoon. You can go to the next slide, Eric, if you don't mind. This is just a graphic. You're not going to be able to see the numbers, but it's just a process in the report itself. It identifies the volumes and pedestrian activity for each location. We certainly include the existing driveways serving the site today. And we look at this and we use this as a base condition. This is morning peak hour. There's one for the afternoon peak. This represents a 2019, what we call as an existing traffic condition. We take these volumes to further steps. And Eric, you can go to the next slide at this point. What we did is we went through a process to determine what could this site generate today if it was to be simply reoccupied in its current configuration. Generally speaking, about 1.2 million square feet of space. It would generate roughly 1,200 to 1,300 vehicles during the morning and afternoon peak hours, the same time periods I referenced before as the typical commuter peaks. So we used it as a reference. What could the traffic be under today's conditions? And we certainly analyzed this. We know how it operates. This site obviously has a very good road system around it, built to provide access to this development originally and the new development, more recent development around it over the last several years. Eric, you can go to the next slide. I tried to summarize, instead of going through many graphics that are difficult to read, the real nitty gritty of the report is, the document shows all the data, but this is just a summary. The conclusion really is the net change in traffic if we were to redevelop it as discussed tonight, from pure office, if you will, to a mixed-use development, in a traffic engineer's dream, this is ideal because in an office development, any development, all the traffic arrives in the morning, very few people leave. And in the afternoon, everyone leaves and very few people go back in. With the mixed use development we're proposing, and we've gone through each land use within this development plan, we don't mix it 50-50 split evenly, but we're pretty close as far as the amount of traffic going in and the amount of traffic going out. For example, removing the office portion, which is about 700,000 square feet of space, we actually remove about 700 vehicles during each of those peak hours. So we take that traffic out of the system. The next step is to analyze the different land uses proposed. That we spent a lot of detail tonight on talking about that. We've identified the traffic related to each land. Another benefit of a mixed use development like this is, perfect example, I may live in one of those apartments and I may work in a different pod within the development. I don't drive, I don't add traffic to the roadway system. That's the perfect world. We would all love that. And today, many people working at home, as mentioned, and they're not driving anywhere. If you look at the volume on roads today, you'll see the traffic is significantly down, but it's starting to increase in the last couple of weeks. If there's a market, it's not outside people that may shop there, although we expect some, and we've accounted for that. But it may be someone from the office that picks up dinner before they leave, or someone that lives there that picks up something when they come home. Again, we take credit for that by not adding that traffic as new traffic to the roadway system. So the previous development could be 1,300 vehicles. We take the warehouse into account. That's on Sawmill Road. That's about 35 vehicles during each of the peak hours. And we look at this before and after, if you will. Eric, the next slide. This is just, I'm just showing you the process we've gone through to get to these volumes, how we come up with this. And the highlighted yellow on the bottom right corner shows you in the morning, we're actually decreasing the total traffic for this redevelopment, if you will, of the same building by about 120 trips. In the afternoon, we had about 131 trips. So it's not a perfect match number, but it's pretty darn close for this type of development. And I give credit for the guys and everyone that worked on the different types of land use to develop a balanced redevelopment, if you will. And from a traffic perspective, this is really the best of everything. So this is just a process. We identify the traffic for each of the land uses. We account for traffic that's already there at the site, which is around 200 trips during each of the peak hours. Obviously, it's a very low generator at the moment. And we take this through a process and we eventually get to, and you've heard it, levels of service and impacts to roads and how our roads operate. Or you can keep going. This is just the warehouse traffic that I mentioned, about 35 trips during each of the peak hours. The next slide is simply just the process of the site traffic being added. That's okay. Just we go through the process of adding this traffic to the roadway system and applying it to before and after, if you will. Now, keep in mind, in the process of looking at the site and the development of the site or redevelopment of the site, we're accounting for all of the continuing development around the site, off the site itself. Obviously, it's mostly residential. We've accounted for that, which is built, maybe not occupied, some of it on construction. We discussed all of these with the city planning department, and we identified the number of units that need to be built, number of units that were under construction at the time of the traffic counts last September. And we added that traffic into a background or a no-build condition. In this case, the no-build condition is 2025. We're looking out about 5 years, because obviously it'll take some time to redevelop and fill up the space as it's redeveloped in the site itself. So the next slide should be some general conclusions. I really simplify it, but the analysis in the traffic engineering world is measured delay, levels of service, comparison of volumes for each of these intersections. And we analyze a 2019 condition, a 2025 full build under existing conditions, the 1,200 vehicles. Then we analyze it with a redevelopment and the numbers that are slightly lower in one time period, slightly higher in the afternoon time period. And we analyze it again to determine, well, how are the roads going to operate, and do we need any mitigation to accommodate these changes in traffic? Again, the road system around the site is excellent. It's mostly 2-lane roads, stop sign control. There was one signal intersection at the bottom of the hill of Sawmill Road, and we analyzed that. And generally speaking, levels of service essentially remain the same. And the levels of service around this entire area are all good levels of service, meaning ABCs, which in traffic engineering is average delay, minimal delay. In school, A is great when you go home. If you go home with an F, which means failure, you're in trouble. In traffic, we use the same terminology, different measures. It's measured delay. And we have a couple locations, in certain cases, a movement within an intersection, change of level service down one or up one, but essentially all the levels of service remain A to C, which is the ideal world for traffic operations at intersections. And based on, and this is a computer model, it's very sophisticated. Fortunately, it's a computer model today and not done by hand anymore. But this analysis tells us that we don't need mitigation to accommodate the change in traffic, which takes into account the change in traffic patterns from the site, the future traffic related to other developments that are ongoing around the site. And we also applied a growth rate of 1% per year, which is from the Connecticut Department of Transportation. So in essence, that's a summary of a very detailed report, and I can certainly answer questions now or later, however we do it tonight. We're not in person, so it's a little bit different. So I tried to simplify it as far as what I showed you tonight with some, not, a lot of detailed charts that are difficult to see, but words on charts that you're looking at now. And Tom, that's it for me right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Eric, you want to take us through some of the other site issue, please?
So I'm going to give a pretty broad overview of the physical features of the site, get you guys a little familiar with the wetland systems, site access, and some of the utilities and storm drainage for the site. I started this off with a slide showing, it's probably pretty hard for you guys to see at this point, but I'm going to try and zoom in here. But this is the existing building and what we have done out there to date, which is the construction and design and approval with the city of Danbury for a new access road. One of the things and the key features about this site that was so complicated is that when Tom went through a great history of the site, and basically this site was originally designed to not be noticed. It was designed to be tucked into the hills and really hidden and tucked away. So one of the challenges for Summit is to come in here and open this up and make it more welcoming and make it more obvious and a much better experience for people to come visit. As most of you are aware, as you come in and head to the south through the access drive, you're met by a myriad of ramps that go up to the varying levels of the garage. And then there's a side ramp that goes down to the side and enters, at which point you have to take a left, then a right, and that brings you down to the lobby. That can be very confusing for someone who's entering the site for the first time. So what was contemplated and what we ended up deciding on was to construct a new one-way access drive, which makes the user experience entering the site a lot more user-friendly. So we constructed a one-way lane that comes down here and meanders down the hill and comes through and meets this corridor entry drive and presents itself at that picture Tom showed earlier of the nice new plaza with the market space and all that. So it's a much more welcoming experience for the people coming to the site. That's basically the layout of that, but I want to just zoom back out. So after that, this is kind of it's really tough to get a picture of that out there now, but this is basically the constructed one-way road that goes down there. Like I said, it's pretty hard to get a good photo of it, but this gives you an idea of where that is now and the new user entry experience. Moving forward, the wetland system. So we went out there and reflagged the wetlands as part of this process, went out there and reevaluated the vernal pools. Matt Pop is here, he can discuss that if anyone has questions at the end. But the wetlands were flagged and there's a detailed report that was included with the appendix as one of the exhibits. So they're located around here. And as you can see, we're not really, as part of the Summit building, we're not really doing anything to these. They're outside the pocket parks. Everything's out there existing. We'll have issues when we go in with the warehouse. They'll have to deal with EIC. It's been designed, and I'll get to a concept plan in a little bit that shows you that warehouse layout, but that's all contemplated the wetlands, and that'll be taken into consideration at the time when it goes in for an actual site plan approval. But this gives you an idea. The green on this map shows the existing wetlands, the blue shows the vernal pools, and the red dashed line is the 100-foot regulated area. So you can see eventually if there is work done within these pocket parks that they actually are outside of the regulated area for the most part. There's a couple areas where it gets a little tight, so there might be some requirements for EIC review and approval for those. But that just gives you a better understanding of the impacts of the wetlands and the association of how they kind of relate to the existing building. As has been discussed earlier, this is broken up into 3 phases. The first phase in yellow being the existing Summit building. Really not much going on there. As we noted before, it's mostly an internal retrofit and redesign of the interior of the building. There's nothing being contemplated, obviously, around the wetland systems or anything outside of this. It's all building renovation. There might be some minor things done around the pocket park or whatever. I'll show in the open space plan, but there was reference to the pool area that would be located right around here. If you can see my hand moving in the middle of the building on the western side. Phase 2 in the burgundy or reddish color would be for the warehouse and maintenance building. So that would be serviced as of now with the concept plans that are being worked on off of Sawmill Road. And that, as I talked about in the wetland slide, would be designed to avoid impacts to the wetland as much as possible. And when this goes in through city review, that would be reviewed by EIC at that time. The third phase would be for additional parking if needed for the site and was contemplated later. We wanted to make sure that was accounted for in this. So we've shown a rough layout and an approximate size of required area for adding additional parking for servicing the existing building. And that would be shown here in the blue area, just off to the west side under the residential area and adjacent to the eventual community pool area. This better shows, I think this helps show how much area is being left undisturbed on site. So the common open space, which we are in excess of for the meeting the requirements of the city of Danbury and the P&D, is shown in green. And this is all the areas that we're not intending to touch. So this is the wetland systems. This is a lot of areas that are just going to remain undisturbed, and that's part of the common open space. The yellow is the usable open space, which is more out there right now as grass and lawn areas. And those are the areas that are around the pocket parks, around the building and in the backside here. So obviously we've avoided the warehouse for this diagram because it wasn't needed to meet the requirements, but there's likely to be more common and usable open space as this gets developed, but it's not needed to meet the minimum requirements because we're well in excess of that. But we just wanted to make sure it was obvious that we're leaving a tremendous part of the site wooded, undisturbed, and maintaining that same feel that made this such a welcoming site and such a great location for Union Carbide when they originally designed the site. The last slide I really wanted to touch base on was related to utilities and storm drainage. So we worked with the city of Danbury in relation to sanitary and water estimations on the site. We created, and it's in the appendix as well as one of the exhibits, a water usage estimate for the site. Basically, this was all office. Now we're introducing residential to this. So there is a slight increase of I think it was about 87,000 gallons per day of water usage for that conversion. When the master plan was originally done back in 2004 and 2002 actually, and then 2004, and it's constantly been kind of revised. The original water tower design for the site contemplated a lot more density that has actually been built out there. So there's actually an extra capacity in the system that hasn't been used up, and working with them, it's shown that we're not even getting close to reaching that capacity, and that the net increase in what we're proposing for the site by changing uses and adding the warehouse is not going to eat too much into that extra additional capacity that's on site, and the city didn't see an issue with the generation rates that we're estimating. The remainder of the utilities, I mean, it's an existing building, so the dashed lines show the utilities. They're fed off of Woodland Road for the most part. Some do come up off of Sawmill Road through an existing kind of dirt road back here that's for the gas line and some of the communication lines as well. We'd also use this as a trunk line for servicing the warehouse as well. Those proposed lines are shown in solid. And then we'd also need to incorporate the sanitary line, which would tie in down on Sawmill Road. I believe there's an existing manhole right around this area that we'd be tying into with the warehouse. The remainder of the utilities for the site would remain as is. Electric and telecom and sanitary would remain the way they are now. So that would go unchanged. And storm drainage around the building is going unchanged. Obviously, we have, you'll see in here, it's maybe a little hard to see, but there's some existing laterals coming out of the building, which is a lot of the roof drainage that comes out. Those will be maintained. We're not touching those. They go out to the wetlands as it is right now through natural vegetative swales. We would leave that untouched since we're not touching any of the roof leaders or any of that nature. The warehouse, when that goes in, obviously there'd be a site plan approval that would go through engineering and they review how it ties in. But for the most part, that system would need to tie into the system in Sawmill Road that eventually discharges to the wetland system off here that goes off into that water course on the west side of Sawmill Road. And that would obviously be sized to mitigate and meet the town standards and the various requirements required by the city. That really sums up what I had to discuss in relation to the wetlands and the general feature of the site. So I can turn it back to Tom if you want to kind of close this out.
Yeah, you can go unshared. Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Felix, did you want to say a few words? We can't hear you.
Yes, a few words. Well, now that we got the mute button off. Good evening. Thanks for your attention. I'm Felix Charney. I'm the principal of Summit Development, also of SG Ridge. I'm joined with some my partners this evening, the Rizzos, Mike Basile. On the phone from Texas are Matt and James, who provided us the financial strength to purchase this building for cash and invest another $25 million in it since we acquired it to begin to do some of the things that you've seen in the slides this evening. Summit was started in 1982. I live in, it was started 5 years after I finished college. And we have had the good fortune of building approximately 85 buildings in Connecticut. The rest are in New York or in Florida. I believe 5 of those buildings are in Danbury. My first adventure in Danbury was the acquisition of a bunch of property on Danbury Airport, which is now known as Executive Air. And I worked with Paul Estefan and Gene Eriquez. I was a lot thinner, not so gray. It was like 1985. We came back into Danbury, I think, in about 2012 when we bought the Lee Farms building at the corner of 84 and Route 7, and then went over on Newtown Road where we built a Popeyes and a Texas Roadhouse. And at the moment, in addition to the small project before you this evening, we're also redoing the old Friendlies over on Newtown Road. So we are the quintessential local mixed-use developer, and we have been doing it for 38 years. A project of this nature and the project of the nature of Reader's Digest and Norden, the redevelopment of South Norwalk, and some of these larger challenges that we've undertaken in our career are not things that we do alone. Not only do we need financial strength, as often provided by our institutional capital partners, but we need intellectual and creative capital. And my first touch on this property was we were competing against it when we were leasing Lee Farms, and unfortunately for the Matrix, we were getting most of the leases because of a lot of the challenges that the Matrix had with its bad access, with its enormity, with its inability to really make it friendly for smaller tenants, which are really what dominates this market. When we were first exposed to it, it obviously had sunk into kind of low levels. There were approximately 100,000 feet of tenants in it. The building was in foreclosure. It was being operated by what is called a receiver. Things were not good. When we decided we wanted to contemplate getting involved, the first thing we did is we visited with the city, and we began to explore ways that we could adaptively reuse this building. As I said earlier, I've done a lot of buildings, and maybe I could convince you I know what I'm talking about. Many of the successes I've had are a result of the collaborative efforts with towns, with cities, with boards and commissions, with administrations, with planning departments. And that is the case here. We've owned it since October of 2018. 6 months before we bought it, I met with Jennifer and Sharon. I met with the Boughton administration. I met with Roger. And we talked about what we thought we needed to do to reestablish this building's sense of prominence, the icon it once was. And I have to compliment that the city has been extremely cooperative and very flexible and phenomenally creative. And then when you add Tom and Eric and Mike Galante and some of the other guys, a lot of what you see before you this evening is a collaborative effort of the input of many, many people. And that's really the watchword, because to take something that would otherwise be described as a white elephant and to reposition it is a tall task. It's very risky. It requires a tremendous amount of capital. It requires a tremendous amount of energy. But what it requires is flexibility amongst all the parties. Because the only thing that we've learned over the last 90 days is we have no idea what the heck's going to happen in the next 90 days. None of us knew that we were going to be locked in our homes, trying to teach our kids to go to school. I saw my wife with a protractor teaching my son math. She didn't know what a protractor was. I certainly don't remember what it was. We are in an ever-evolving environment. When we purchased Reader's Digest, I guarantee Reader's Digest never thought they were going out of business, but that changed because of the internet. Things change constantly. And for a city to remain vibrant and for its real estate to remain consistent with the local market, it needs to be flexible. And what we put before you this evening and what Tom has detailed in great detail is a flexible plan that allows us to adaptively reuse this building in a way that we believe we can refill it with a diverse number of users, reestablish its role as a prominent building in a really successful and vibrant city. So it contributes not only to the quality of life, but also contributes to the financial base of this community. And all I want to say is it's been an absolute pleasure working with the folks in this town. They've been incredibly cooperative, and I look forward to continuing that experience. And I thank you this evening for your attention.
Tony, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you very much. I do want to thank everybody who's been involved with the project and all the cooperation we've had from the city. And just to give you an idea of where I stand or what my involvement is with the project, because a lot of people get curious of that. I am partners with the Summit Group. It's something, this is a project that we've believed in since the first day that we talked to them about it. You know, we talk about some of the ever-changing issues that go on in our society and the different climate. You know, Danbury, known as the Hatters because we were a hatting town. We also, after the hatting, had a lot of manufacturing, and now we've kind of transitioned into medical. It's what Danbury has always done. We are a resilient community. We are a community of people that are born and bred here. We stay here, and we live, work, and play here, but we always change with the times. And I try to look at what's going on with this building, and a lot of people talk about the 3,500 people that worked in that building, but what we don't talk about is it was 36 years ago. It's been a long time since this building has been full. And when we look around our city, my family believes that we would never support anything that we don't believe is good for this town. And when we talk about some of the manufacturing and some of the other facilities around, unlike Felix in some ways where he's done the mixed use, you know, we have taken buildings, Cary Manufacturing and Hubble recently, and Bethel and Republic Foil, and the old Pacific Plumbing and Omaha Beef Butcher Building, and most recently Scholastic Book, when you talk about books that are leaving. And you transform those buildings, you bring them back to life, you take them from being empty and you make those vibrant projects in our community. That's what we believe that this will be. COVID-19 has forever changed the way we will live, more than likely. But I don't look at it as a detriment to the city of Danbury or to our state for that matter. I look at it as totally opposite. I think people are going to want to flock to Danbury. We sit in a very good position. When I look at what we have a building that's been half empty since the late 80s. And we have an opportunity to make this a truly mixed-use facility. We have some tenants in that building now. Some have already been mentioned. Some of them who talk to us because they're global companies and talk to us about the ability to have their staff live where they work. We also have been looking at some medical in this building. So, you know, to bring medical people in and have 4 stories, one pod of doctors, I think it's a blessing too. You're talking about a lot of covered parking. You're talking about a lot of positive area. And I know a lot of you have toured the facility, and we appreciate you doing so. I think it's important, if you haven't, that you do look at it, to have a police hub there that really is at no cost to the city. And anybody who knows the track record of any of the things that our family's involved with, we usually try to do something that helps our city and helps our community out. It's important that we do that. So I just try to look at that this building could be very vibrant with that mixed use. Empty nesters, young professionals, I see them spending quite a bit of time here. But the most important thing, I think, is to realize that this whole center core of the building, where the restaurant is and where the dry cleaners may be, and where the barbershop and the hair salon and the fitness center and the cafeteria, that's in the building will be open to that whole side of town, not just to the summit. So we are bringing a lot of commercial, a lot of retail to the benefit of that whole area. And I think when you see this place and you come through and you see how it's been transformed, you'll understand that. So, I mean, I ask that everybody be open-minded and look at how we can positively change this community, and why not have in our area Danbury be one of the first. We typically do that in everything we do. So I'll leave it on that note, and Tom, I turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Mr. Chairman, I've just got a couple of major points to make, and then we'll turn it over to others. This master plan complies with various other checklist type requirements, which we fully addressed in the master plan. And the planning director confirmed that we covered those points in her report to you. So I'm not going to take up more time going through all of those, but there are two important items to address. The Planning Commission has given this zone change and the master plan a unanimous positive recommendation, which you heard earlier. They found that it's consistent with the plan of conservation and development, met the purpose and intent of the PND zone, met the criteria for a zone change, and would not negatively impact health and safety and welfare. We pointed out in our master plan at pages 38 and 39 how this proposed zone change and master plan are consistent with the plan of conservation and development. Likewise, Sharon Calitro has also done the same thing in her report on pages 5 and 6. The POCD encourages new development on the west side of Danbury. In addition, the POCD, in reference to the west side, states the Reserve Plan Neighborhood District is the key to the West Side District meeting its full potential. It also says the city should actively promote the West Side District as the major center for future economic development. Targeted land development or redevelopment, in this case, should include future corporate offices, research and development firms, light industry, and housing. Well, you've heard me go through in quite some detail. This master plan that we've presented to you includes all of those targeted desired uses. Section 6 of the Plan of Conservation and Development states, adequate and desirable housing is essential not only for the health and welfare of the public, but also for the continued economic well-being of the community. Unless the housing challenge is met, the community will find it increasingly difficult to provide for a vital housing needs of present and future generations. This master plan does provide for these present and future needs. The housing that's proposed complements the existing single family or townhouse styled residential housing on the west side and that surrounds this particular property. This particular housing we're proposing is different. As stated in the BFJ planning report, our targeted demographic for this housing is younger people, single or married with no children, young professionals, or downsizing empty nesters. In her report, the planning director states that the rezoning of this site to PND and redevelopment as envisioned in the master plan that we've presented to you is consistent with vision statement number 3 of the 2013 POCD. And that states that the west side would be the focus of future development in the city, hosting new growth industries and creatively designed neighborhoods. Retrofitting this large building for a variety of uses, including opportunities to live, work, and play, can result in a creatively designed neighborhood, unquote. As she and we have stated, this zone change and master plan are both consistent with the goals and recommendations stated in the land development plan, the West Side District Plan, the Economic Development Plan, and the Housing Plan. I would highlight that the land development plan encourages preservation and renovation of structures. That's what we seek to do. The West Side Plan indicates that the west side of the existing PND should become the center for future economic development, and that existing structures can be reused to manage growth. Now, we comply with the POCD. We also comply with all the criteria for a zone. As the Planning Commission unanimously found, as I said earlier, And as the planning director points out, we comply with all the criteria for a zone change. As we just said, it complies with the POCD. Environmentally sensitive areas will not only be adequately protected, but as Eric and I have pointed out to you, this project allows substantial preservation of more than 40% of the entire site as open space, or forested open space, really. As has been the subject of this entire presentation, this proposed development is in substantial harmony with the surrounding area. Existing streets and access roads and driveways are more than adequate for this development. Sawmill Road's an arterial road, and this property is served by municipal water and sewer. So it checks all the boxes for meeting the criteria for a zone change. So in conclusion, the benefit of this zone change in master plan for this property is that it would allow for the adaptive reuse of this large building with uses that are in fact IL40 type uses, but also would allow for a mix or marriage of uses that are not permitted in the IL40 zone, such as restaurants, retail, and residences. Logically and objectively, this mix of uses is compatible with the surrounding zone. As Chairman Calitro pointed out, quote, future development of this site and or reuse of the existing 1,267,168 square foot structure solely for permitted or specially exceptioned IL40 uses may be questionable given today's business climate, unquote. Frankly, given the climate of the last 10 to 15 years for this particular site, the Planning Commission chairman agreed, and he said succinctly, if not this plan, what are they going to do with that building? It's not practical to knock down a 1.2 million square foot building. The proposed development in this master plan is for the retrofitting of this large, substantially underutilized commercial office building and includes continued office use, retail, restaurant, banquet facilities, the conference center, and the housing mix that we've talked about. In the final analysis, hearing everything that we've said tonight, this proposed development will be a live, work, play, eat, and shop, all-inclusive neighborhood. This plan was not just slapped together. This is a very real vision here. There is actually some excitement, a real buzz amongst business tenants and prospective tenants wanting to be part of the mix of uses that we're proposing and to have this building come alive again 24/7. Proposal really is a positive for both the city as well as for my client. And we all just want to thank you for your time tonight and your careful study of this proposal. And we have a team here that are ready to answer any questions maybe you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Beecher. Just for the record, I want to note that we did receive your letter to Chairman Haddad. I'm going to note that that letter is Exhibit A this evening. You did reference it. You didn't read the whole thing, so I want to note it as Exhibit A. Also,
the letter from last week, Mr. Chairman?
The letter, we received it, well, we received it Monday, so there was the one that you had just sent over the weekend, Sharon. When did, Joanne, when did we actually receive that?
No, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. So the Exhibit A for tonight would have been those slides that he shared, Attorney Beecher shared. The letter was already in the file and listed on the agenda. This was just an email of the presentation he shared tonight with the layout and the numbers per floor. So that would become Exhibit A.
Okay, I wasn't sure about the letter because it came second, so I didn't know if it got to the town clerk's office or anything along those.
The letter was on the agenda. We added the letter to the agenda, so that was fine.
Okay, thank you. So with that, then I will ask if there's any commission members who have any questions. What we'll do, I think, to make it expedient, we'll direct our questions to Attorney Beecher, and then Attorney Beecher can forward them on to the appropriate person that he think may be the best person to answer that. So any commissioner members have any questions for the presentation?
I'm scrolling through to see if there's any hands raised. I don't see anybody.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Beecher. Then next, just for procedure.
Oh, wait a minute, Sydney. I see Cindy's Sydney. I'm sorry, Sydney.
Commissioner Almeida.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beecher and everybody else for your very thorough presentation. It's a lot of stuff here to digest, over 300 pages from my count. kind of wish we had more time to go through it, but I do have some questions I jotted down here. You mentioned in phase 2 that there was going to be a warehouse office, and on page 4 of the report that Commissioner Melillo read, there was a mention about residential apartment component. What is that about?
Well, there's two phases. The first phase is the entire large building, the 1.2 million square foot building.
Right.
And that has the mix of uses in it. Phase 2 is a separate building, large building, plus a smaller 4,800 square foot maintenance building, which would be a warehouse, and that would be accessed directly off of Sawmill Road. It would not use the private roadways within
Right,
the
but
reserve.
there's no residential as part of phase 2, is there?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. None.
Okay, because I wasn't sure about that. It was mentioned on page 4. Okay, another question I had, somewhere in that report was also mentioned that there would be no affordable housing. Was there any consideration given to affordable housing, especially considering the serious lack of affordable housing on the market in Danbury?
Well, there was some consideration in putting this entire plan together of a variety of types of residential units, including assisted living or age restricted or affordable housing. And again, circling back to sort of the general theme of this project, as well as our presentation tonight, is that the ultimate plan that came together was trying to have a marriage of appropriate uses that would all work together. So in this case, the market rate apartments that likely would be tied to some degree to some of the professional uses within the building, we thought was the marriage of residential and commercial that would work for trying to put together a project to fill 1.2 million square feet of space.
So the apartments will be at market rates is basically what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it for now. I guess if I have any other questions, I'll ask them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Attorney Beecher or one of the presenters? Okay, then seeing none, what we're going to do next, we're still going to follow the same protocol. I'm going to ask for those people who wish to speak in favor of this petition. I'm going to give them an opportunity to speak. Sharon will unmute you momentarily, and we'll try to do that in an orderly fashion. Then after that, Sharon, we're going to ask you to read any emails which you've received, which would be in favor of the petition after any speaker here, and then we'll move on to the same thing in opposition. So with that, is there anybody present this evening via Zoom who would like to speak in favor of this petition?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that's Attorney Marcus, Neil Marcus.
Attorney
Yes,
Marcus?
ma'am. Good evening. For the record, Neil Marcus, and I'm a property owner in the city of Danbury, having an office at 158 Deer Hill Avenue. And after the very good presentation that Tom Beecher and the team has put on, I just I have to speak practically about the benefit of this project. And listening tonight, I realized, looking at the crowd on my screen, I'm probably the only one attending this meeting tonight who actually sat through all the presentations to the city of Danbury for the building of the Union Carbide building in the late 1970s. And at that point, the city was just excited. The level of excitement was incredible that this company was going to choose Danbury to build this enormous facility and really set Danbury in the direction of a corporate headquarters. And the effect on that, we still see today. The effect on that is the improvements that had been made to the Danbury Hospital, for example, with that type of support from to our economy generally. And it was really, it was a sad day when Carbide left. And of course, it was even more of a sad day when that building fell into disrepair. That building is functionally obsolete, and that was pointed out by the experts when they talk about adaptive reuse. When Felix Charney, who reminds me that we have done business and known each other for 38 years, told me about his idea for the Carbide building, I was, first of all, skeptical that it was a huge project. You had to be crazy to do it. And then I had to say, you're probably the only one I know who would do it. And the fact of the matter is, it's a great project. And it's a great idea to reuse that so that we don't have to tune into Jane Pauley on Sunday morning and watch another building implode from its former elegance. But this building is not going to come back in its current form ever. And it needs to have the creative reuse that's being proposed. Felix, in his presentation about what he's done, particularly in the Danbury area, some of those projects I was involved with him on, left out one project that he didn't do. And that project tells you more reasons of why you have to approve this application. If you go down to the town of Reading and look at the Gilbert and Bennett warehouse and wire mill, sometime about 35 years ago, with a team that Felix put together, we presented an adaptive reuse for that property to the town of Reading. The town of Reading has rejected it then. It has regretted it ever since, including the fact that the first selectman called me a couple of years ago and said, do you think you could get a hold of Felix Charney and see if he could come back and do something with his property? Because they missed the boat there. They just didn't see the need for adaptive reuse of a functionally obsolescent property. You guys on this commission, and the report from the staff supports it, can see the need and can see how it'll be filled with this project. So I know it's been a long evening, and I don't want to make it longer because I still have 2 items on your agenda, which I hope you get to. But in reality, I would be amiss if I didn't sit here and think of the history of this project in the future. And the history is grand and represented a terrific chapter in the city of Danbury. The future is what we're talking about. And it really is our opportunity now to do this. And anybody who is a resident of the city, who works in the city, or is a taxpayer in the city ought to be out here supporting this project because it just makes sense. So I'm fully behind this concept and hope that you approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Marcus. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
Just give me a second. I'm looking for.
I'm just going to ask my 3 times. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
I have, this is Councilman Benchenez, I do.
Thank you, Councilman Chianese.
Thank you. I have seen the building, you know, growing up in this area for over 40 years. I've seen this development go from the beginning into where it is now. And I'm in favor of this because I'm always in favor of seeing improvements to a piece of property. We can go back in the mid-90s where we converted the oil mill building from being a manufacturing from the hatting industry to where it is now residential housing. And it has definitely changed that area for the better. And over time, it's been a very good project. And I do see that this project will kind of be just as successful. So I am in favor of it. I think it'll be good for the city in the long run. At least phase 1 will be. I do have a concern for phase 2. Being an ex-chair of the Environmental Impact Commission, I can see by the map by Attorney Beecher gave us that building will be entirely in a wetlands. So I think I'll have a concern with that, but that will be addressed later on. But definitely for phase 1, I'm definitely in favor of it. And I think it'll be successful and it will add to the value of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, Sydney, you have your hand up still. Is that from before?
Sorry, I just forgot to lower it.
That's okay. I'm just checking who's waving or who's raised their hand. I don't see anybody else, but
is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? That's the third time. Ms. Calitro, I know you have at least one email which you've received.
Yes, so I received an email today, Tuesday, June 9th, 5:59 p.m. from Andrea Gartner. Dear Sharon, I would like to address item 1 on tonight's agenda regarding the petition for a planned neighborhood development P&Z by SC Ridge Owner LLC. I want to commend the developers for listening to neighbors' concerns during their effort to change the zoning ordinance of their property, the former Matrix building. I attended those meetings and know the company to be very open to ideas that serve the Danbury community, especially those residing in that area. Moving forward and in the spirit of a true planned neighborhood development, I want to trust our city leadership to include the public in any discussion of placing a school at this location, charter or otherwise. It is no secret that Mayor Mark Boughton and staff have been in conversation at the state level of including a school at this property. There's a lot happening at present with the bond referendum, COVID-19, and what to do about meeting the city's educational challenge. A school on the west side would alleviate a system bursting at the seams, so it is a good idea. But in the name of transparency, the public should, and certainly the Board of Education members, be a part of that discussion. With warmest regards, Andrea. I read it, I didn't see her. I don't see her on the Zoom meeting, or else she could have presented it herself, but I told her it would get into the record no matter what.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Calitro. At this point, is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this petition?
Attorney Markets has his hand up. But I think he put his hand up and stepped away.
I don't think he took his hand down from when he raised it earlier.
It's
Councilman
possible.
Pello, I see you put your camera on. Do you wish to speak in opposition?
I am on. Yeah, I'm not exactly in opposition to this, but there is some ambivalence, maybe a little bit more than just a little ambivalence. Attorney Beecher had a thorough presentation, but he was somewhat expansive in his definition of consistency when it comes to compliance with the POCD. Staff's own report says that it should also be noted that the petition is inconsistent with the land development plan map of the POCD. Inconsistent is a sort of a genteel way of saying it's out of compliance. Interestingly enough, it says just a few paragraphs later that the proposed development is consistent with the plan of conservation and development and the comprehensive planning program on which it is based. So there's some ambivalence clearly within the report from staff to begin with. We'll leave that aside for a moment. The basic issue that we're seeing in Danbury, and we've been talking about this for years now, as this project has wound its way, not only with this specificity with the new buyers, but also previously with the reserve and other similar projects of large residential scope in the city, is the impact that these projects will have on the schools. I don't want to use dramatic terms, but the pressure on the school system is profound and it's real. Anytime a residential project of any scope is proposed, the city has to look at any downstream effects on education enrollment, not just at the beginning of the project, but during its entire life, which can be decades. And during the life of a project, they usually start out with relatively high-end tenants, and then they gradually move into working class. And when they do that, the children basically follow. And some of these projects that were never really intended to have lots of kids, I think the petitioners mentioned somewhere in the neighborhood of 17, wind up having multitudes more than that. The developers are proud, have stated publicly that they're proud of this new proposal for the city that will offset some of these costs with their student impact fee. I think at the last meeting I was at, it was proposed to be $550,000 to begin with, gradually rising up to $750,000, and that was essentially a gift to the people of Danbury from the developers. But honestly, I have, when I look at the numbers on that, when I look at a project of that scope, 404 units of executive to near luxury housing, I'm looking at a project that's worth somewhere in the vicinity of $100 million. And the taxes on a $100 million residential parcel would be so much more than $550,000. In actual fact, that student impact fee would be a gift from the taxpayers of Danbury to the developers. I mean, you're looking at, I just take Kennedy Flats, for example, with 374 units, which is smaller than this particular proposal, and just look at what they're paying in taxes. And that's a downtown project that's not nestled in the woods near Rivington in the bucolic hills of the west side. I mean, so the numbers that the council may or may not have to examine will probably have to take that into account. And I think that that number, that 550,000, is more of a starting point than an ending point. And I think that the ideal would be to have that in addition to market rate taxes on 404 units, whatever that happens to be. I mean, you could expect to pay somewhere in the vicinity of $3,000 per unit, $2,000 per unit. And this student impact fee works out to about $1,300. So it's well below by a substantial margin what the market would actually be. If it was, on the other hand, added to the actual market rate of those units, it would go a long way, I think, in assuaging the issue that the Board of Education is going to have with more students downstream. But the other issue, and that's more of a tactical issue, the other issue is a little bit more strategic in the sense that this graft of a PND onto an IL40 zone, I have not been reassured that it cannot be used in other IL40 zones. And there are other IL40 zones. And one of the difficulties that we face in Danbury, in spite of the fact that it's almost 45 square miles, is the fact that we will never be able to increase our inventory of IL40 land. It's just not going to happen. We see this time and time again. We had a landfill. We closed it down because condominiums were built, not even in our community, but in another community. And the proximity of residential to that kind of industrial uses made it simply untenable. The politicians had to respond by capping the dump and shutting it down. We lost a landfill. We see this all over the place. I mean, there was a petition in front of the zoning commission back in the 90s or early O's to rezone some of the land between what is now Target and what was Grolier. There's some 35 acres, rezone that from industrial to residential. And there's a gas company there and several other facilities there that while they would be allowed to remain, if you put condominiums with residences and children next to these factories, you have a gas company that vents gas. I mean, the phone would ring and the politicians would have to respond by, doing something to attenuate the issues with the industry. But the fight between industry and residential, simply by weight of voters, industry loses. So if we reduce the inventory of IL40 land within the scope of this project, and by allowing the zone in Danbury, it potentially reduces the scope and breadth of IL40 land in other areas of the city, we're going to lose. I mean, we will get to a point where we lose the high-paying jobs and we've got PhDs working in industry. We have entry-level jobs working in industry. And if we transform the city if we de-industrialize Danbury, Attorney Marcus said that Danbury was really excited when Union Carbide came, and that industry coming into Danbury transformed the city. And I believe that. I was here when it happened. We are now moving not in that direction, but in the opposite direction, where we're transforming potential industrial property into residential property. And while the argument can be made that more people want to come to Danbury, more people should be welcome to Danbury, and they will be, I think transforming industrial land, rare industrial land, into residential property is not the proper way to proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Attella. Is there anybody else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anybody else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anybody else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Ms. Calitro, are we clear?
I don't see anybody trying to speak.
Okay, and did you receive any emails in opposition?
No, I did not.
Thank you. Ms. Calitro, do you have any comments of this for staff comments?
No, not really. No, again, just to point out to Councilman Rotello's question on my report was I did point out that it was inconsistent with the land development plan map because that map has not changed since the 2002 POCD. It was not updated as part of, the maps were not updated as part of the 2013 POCD amendment. And I was pointing it out because the surrounding lands of the reserve still show what they showed in 2002 on the land development plan map, as many other, as are many other parcels in Danbury that have, you know, changed over time. That map hasn't not been updated. That was that point. So generally, it was consistent with the plan.
Thank you, Ms. Calitro. I was actually going to ask you that question just to clarify that the POCD map was designed to reflect what Danbury looked like probably around 1999, 2000, and advanced 2001, 2002 comprehensive plan. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Calitro?
I don't see anybody raising any hands.
Okay, I can see most of the commission on my screen. I don't see anybody there. Attorney Beecher, do you have any rebuttal comments?
Just two points, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I just want to make it clear in response to Mr. Rotello's comments about what he called the student impact fee. That's an additional assessment that SC Ridge has agreed to, but that's in addition to the normal property taxes that would be assessed on this property and paid by SC Ridge. In other words, it's in addition to, it's not a substitute for taxes to be paid to the city of Danbury. So I just wanted to clarify that point and to pick up on Ms. Calitro's point about not complying with the old development plan map. That map doesn't even show the reserve on it. That's how old it is. So it doesn't show any of that particular part of the development. So I don't want to beat a dead horse on the other points. I think we've made our points very clear. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, thank you again for your time. We'd ask you if you would close the public hearing tonight and perhaps give the planning director some direction on a resolution. And we hope it's a resolution of approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, just to wrap up this public hearing, and then I'll note that Commissioner Haddad has joined us, and I will relinquish the chair to him after that. I will entertain a motion to either close or continue the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Motion to close by Commissioner Fay. Do we have a second? Second. To close by Commissioner Jowdy. Discussion on closing the public hearing. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote on closing the public hearing. Commissioner Fay, a yes will close, a no will not close.
Yes.
Commissioner Jowdy?
Yes.
Commissioner Hylinski?
Yes.
Commissioner Massey?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Almeida?
Yes.
Commissioner Henry?
Yes.
Commissioner Merchan?
Yes.
I too vote yes. That's 9-0. The public hearing is closed. Commissioner Haddad, I believe you are here. Are you here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I came in a little while ago on the YouTube. I got back into town. I still don't have my eyes. I apologize. Can you finish the meeting up? Can you?
Sure, no problem, Commissioner Haddad. I will now, just for the record, do you remember who did I seat for Commissioner Haddad? Was it Merchan or Henry?
Henry.
Henry? Okay,
Yes.
so Commissioner Henry, at this point in time, Commissioner Haddad will reclaim his seat, and you will just serve as an alternate for the remainder of this evening.
Okay,
So that gives you in other words, you just won't be voting.
Thank you, Mr. I'm not qualified for the Ridge petition.
Yeah, we just closed the public hearing on the Ridge petition.
I didn't hear enough of it. I'm not qualified, so he'll have to be reseated if it comes to a vote.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, unless we have a motion to move the SC Ridge, which I don't think I'm not anticipating. We can move on to item number 2, the public hearing number 2. This is the application of Fast Lane Auto Repair LLC, Payne Road Investments LLC, 60 Payne Road, Lot N 12001 for a certificate of location approval for a motor vehicle general repairer's license in the IG 80 zone. I will note for the record that the legal notice has already been read into the record this evening. I know Attorney Marcus, you are here to present, and Ms. Calitro, I know you have some information relevant to this as well. Do you need to share, or is Attorney Marcus going to share first?
Well, I'll just read into the record before Attorney Marcus speaks. I got an email from Sean Harity, who was the zoning enforcement officer, late yesterday. And so I want to read it into the record for tonight's meetings. It says, Sharon, again, it was June 8th at 12:27 p.m. Sharon, we have issued a certificate of compliance for the site work and mechanics garage at 60 Payne Road. These documents were issued after the completion of conditions in a stipulated judgment titled Harity Sean, Zoning Enforcement Officer of the City of Danbury, the City et al. Versus Payne Road Investments LLC et al. DBD CV 19 6031472S, 60 Payne Road, Danbury, Connecticut 06810, the property. We have no issues with the auto repair location approval moving forward.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Calitro.
attached to that were copies of a June 3rd certificate of zoning compliance signed by Tim Rosati on behalf of Sean Harity, and a certificate of approval from David Newland from the building department dated March 9th, 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Calitro. Attorney Marcus, do you wish to speak in favor of this petition?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the members of the commission, for the record, Neil Marcus, Conan Wolf, PC 158 Deer Hill Avenue, on behalf of the applicant, which is Payne Road Investment LLC, and the tenant proposed for this property is another LLC called Fast Lane Auto. And the reason Sharon, and I appreciate her putting in the record, put all this information in the record, which is not necessarily something you hear for a location certificate, is that this property has a long history, which I will try to summarize very quickly. If you're familiar with it, it's a property in Danbury that borders the town of Bethel. It's on the side of Payne Road, which is Danbury. Across the street is Bethel. Bethel's residential across the street. Danbury is the IG 80 zone. However, this property is a pre-existing non-conforming property. It was formerly Skip Turner Automotive, and Reed Turner, who operated it for many years, built a house. And so we have a pre-existing non-conforming residential structure on the site. And that next to it, he built his business, which is the subject of this application, and it's a repair garage, and he ran it for years. And as a matter of fact, he got a certificate approval from the Danbury ZBA to run the automotive shop in March of 1980. The building was built the building permit was in the 79. It was occupied in 80, and he got a certificate which is recorded in volume 637 at page 279 of the Danbury Land Records. He sold the property to Payne Road Investment about 2 years ago, and he moved out and he left the garage. And unbeknownst to Payne Road was that the property had a series of zoning violations, and none of it was created by Payne Road, none of it was created by Fast Lane, but Skip Turner had converted the non-conforming house into a two-family. He'd put residences above the garage. He had a couple of apartments upstairs. I mean, it was completely out of sync with the Danbury regs. That led to a enforcement proceeding. That's the stipulation that Sharon referred to. And then Payne Road did an enormous amount of work on this property to bring it into conformity. For anything that looked like it was residential on the second floor was ripped out, including the bathrooms up there. Everything was ripped out in the house. Anything in the basement that looked residential was converted so that it was not a separate residence. It was only used by the people who occupy the house. But it took us forever. So if you look at your own file, you'll see that I applied for this permit last fall. And it just sat there and sat there. And eventually it sat there so long, we were hoping that it would get to the point that the city would sign off on the landlord's repair work, but it just took forever. And so it was denied. We reapplied. And tonight is the first opportunity to get in front of the commission and ask you to approve a use of this property that has been ongoing since March of 1980. And the applicant has submitted a copy of his proposed license application for repairs permit with the state of Connecticut. And as you know, until the zoning commission approves the location, the state won't even look at his application. So these poor people who've been trying to run a repair business have basically been shut down even long before the coronavirus shut everybody down. So they've got their application just sitting in my file. But we've provided the commission as part of our application all the paperwork that's necessary, including a copy of a site plan, which of course you now have a certificate that it complies with zoning. And there is a waiver of a site plan approval that was issued. It was submitted to the commission as part of the application that was issued by Jennifer Eminger months ago, because the use of the property for automotive repair, it has not changed. So I'm going to ask you, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it. But it's got more of a zoning history than probably is necessary for the commission to determine that. And you've got, of course, a determination from the zoning enforcement officer, which has been read into the record. But it shouldn't take much for the commission to determine that the use is allowable at this site. And given all the time that's passed, I'm just hoping that you can act on that quickly. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Attorney Marcus. I will just say for the commission's benefit that this has been ongoing. I'm actually aware of it. I was made aware of it back when I was chairman of the commission prior to the election. We had the public hearing originally scheduled for before the election. And really, truthfully, we were just waiting on the final sign off for zoning compliance and a couple things that needed to be taken care of, which we have now gotten confirmation. So with that, are there any questions for Attorney Marcus? Commissioner Fay.
Was the current owner not made aware of the violations, or were they not acted upon by the commission? It's unclear.
Mr. Chair, if I can answer that question?
Yes, Attorney Marcus.
Okay. The current owner was not aware because there were absolutely no citations. The prior owner, Mr. Turner, had never been inspected, and he didn't pull permits for any of this work. And so,
okay, so there was nothing on the land records that would have indicated in a municipal search that something was awry.
None. Actually, the municipal search would have indicated that Turner pulled his building permit, got all of his inspections, but never actually asked for a CO. So there was no CO issued, but the inspection would have shown all the permits were issued, and that's why, you know, now we have a certificate from the building inspector basically closing out what was pulled in 1979. I mean, I don't know where you were in 1979. Yeah.
Good year.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Attorney Marcus? Okay, it doesn't look like any. Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Ms. Calitro, how are we looking?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, do we have any letters in favor of this petition?
I do not have anything in writing.
Thank you. Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Assuming we are clear, Ms. Calitro?
Yes, we are clear. I don't see anybody wishing to comment.
Thank you. Ms. Calitro, do we have any staff comments?
I guess I would just say the recollection of the last year or so represented by Attorney Marcus may not be exactly how I might have recalled it or stated it, but be that as it may, we got to the end of a resolution. The site's been inspected and certified by the building official and the zoning enforcement officers. So that is why it's moving forward. And it has taken a while because that had not occurred.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Calitro? Okay, Mr. Attorney Marcus, do you have any rebuttal comments?
Only Sharon and I share similar, but she's much more of a pessimist and I'm much more of an optimist. That's the only difference.
I have some other memories as well, Attorney Marcus. I think I would have leaned a little bit more towards Sharon's comments than yours, but that's okay. With that, then I will entertain a motion to close or continue the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Motion to close by Commissioner
Second.
Hyland, seconded by Commissioner Fay. Discussion. Okay, again, we will do a yes vote will be to close, a no vote will not to be to close. Commissioner Hylinski.
Yes.
Commissioner Fay.
Yes.
Commissioner Jowdy.
Yes.
Commissioner Massey.
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley.
Yes.
Commissioner Almeida.
Yes.
Commissioner Haddad.
Yes.
Commissioner Merchan.
Yes.
I too will vote yes. Public hearing is closed. Do we wish to move this to item number 1 under old business for discussion and possible action?
Yes.
Made by Commissioner Fay, seconded by
Mike.
Commissioner Massey.
Sure.
Discussion. Okay, this is administrative, so all those in favor of this, moving this to item number 1 under old business signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Jowdy?
why didn't we not put the first petition number 1 on old business?
Mainly since it's a change of zone for the PND, that actually needs a much more of a detailed motion written by staff, because there's some parameters and stuff that really needs to be addressed. And so the best circumstance for that would be to carry it over to the next public hearing. While Commissioner Haddad can watch the video and qualify himself, or he can still chair the meeting and just not be a voting member. He can seat somebody else to vote in his place. But just to make sure all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed, it's procedurally best for a petition of that magnitude to go to council.
Okay, but we closed the public hearing, so we're not going to have another public hearing on it.
No, but at our next zoning commission meeting, it will show up under old business automatically for discussion and possible action.
Okay,
We just won't be voting on it this evening.
I just want to make sure the applicants realize this.
Yes, they do.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Okay, so we are moving on to public hearing number 3. This is the petition of B&B Wellness to amend sections 3C4, 5A2B, 5A5, 5B2B, 5C5 of the zoning regulations, medical marijuana dispensaries as special exception in CG20 and CA80 zones. Let the record reflect that the zoning commission has already read the legal notice into the record at the beginning of this meeting. Again, for convenience sake, I will read the staff report as well as the planning commission recommendation to the City of Danbury Planning Commission, City of Danbury Zoning Commission from Sharon B. Calitro, AICP, Planning Director, dated May 28th, 2020, regarding medical marijuana dispensary zoning amendments. We are in receipt of a petition from Neil R. Marcus on behalf of D&B Wellness, care of Compassionate Care Center of Connecticut, to amend sections 3C4, 5A2B, 5A5, 5B2B, and 5B5 of the zoning regulations regarding medical marijuana dispensaries. The reason given by the petitioner for the amendment is as follows. Though the zoning regulations permit the sale of medical marijuana, they require the retail store to sell other products which the state of Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection, DCP, will not allow. The amendment seeks to conform the zoning regulations with the licensing provisions of the state DCP while limiting the number and location of dispensaries. Comments. In 2012, as you may recall, the state enacted regulations to permit and regulate the dispensing and production of medical marijuana. The regulations were issued by the DCP and were quite lengthy. In response, and after a brief moratorium to consider options, the Zoning Commission defined both facilities and adopted sections 3C4. This section provides that dispensaries are allowed, but only in retail stores or shops, including pharmacies, that offer for sale other prescriptions and non-prescription drugs, medicines, cosmetics, and other sundry items. Practically, in effect, this results in the sale only within pharmacies. To date, there have been no applications for dispensaries. Production facilities are prohibited. Since adoption, there have been changes to the state regulations, including, among other items, the number of dispensaries allowed to be licensed, as well as conditions for which the use of medical marijuana is authorized. A review of the state's medical marijuana program website indicates that there are 17 licensed dispensaries in Connecticut providing medical marijuana to 41,110 registered patients. Of these totals, 3 dispensaries are located in Fairfield County, and 9,106 registered patients are from Fairfield County. To the best of our knowledge, there have been no significant land use related issues associated with facilities that dispense medical marijuana pursuant to a state issued license. Discussions with DCP medical marijuana program staff and the review of this application have indicated that the sale of medical marijuana within a facility that sells other non-medical marijuana related goods is closely scrutinized in the licensing process and practically may result in the denial of the license. Additionally, the federal government still lists marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance, and regardless of decisions and actions by law enforcement agencies relative to the prosecution of marijuana-related offenses under certain conditions, still prohibits its sale under federal law. Pharmacies, which are licensed by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, are not permitted to dispense Schedule I controlled substances. Therefore, such facilities which are considered a retail use in Danbury effectively cannot sell medical marijuana. Considering the time that has elapsed since inception of the state program, changes in state statutes, and the nature of conditions along with the increasing number of residents registered in Fairfield County, the Commission may reasonably find that an amendment to clarify where such sales would be permitted is now timely in Danbury. The Commission should also know that the petitioner is a license holder for the dispensary on Gorella Road in Bethel and plans to relocate to Danbury upon obtaining necessary city approvals. Both the CG20 and CA80 zones are commercial zones that allow many of the same uses, including a broad range of retail uses. The CA80 zone is more restricted to minimize the potential for significant traffic generation from uses on this critical arterial. Pharmacies are allowed in both zones as retail uses. Notwithstanding the above, the Commission may also find that the sale of medical marijuana as a product, irrespective of how it is regulated by state statutes and federal laws, is similar to the sale of other retail products, and therefore allowing it in both zones may be appropriate. Currently, if medical marijuana could be dispensed within a pharmacy per section 3C4 of the existing regulations in compliance with state statutes, it would be allowed in both zones. Proposed amendment. The amendment seeks to revise sections 3C4 as related to medical marijuana dispensaries only. The language in the existing section regarding production facilities is not proposed to be changed. The definition of medical marijuana in section 2 is also not proposed to change. Amendments are proposed to both zones in sections 5.0. Sections 3C4. The amendment proposes that this use be allowed by a grant of special exception in both the CG20 and CA80 zoning districts with specific additional requirements as noted. There is a reference proposed to state law to ensure adherence to applicable statutes. The amendment allows for 2 medical marijuana dispensaries in Danbury. At least one other community in Fairfield County has similarly limited the number of dispensaries. It also specifies that said facilities shall not engage in the retail sale of recreational marijuana. While this is still prohibited in Connecticut, there continues to be legislation proposed that would legalize its use. Even if that were to pass, under this proposed amendment, the retail sale of recreational marijuana would not be allowed in a medical marijuana dispensary. The amendment also requires that prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the facility operator must provide the state-issued license from DCP. Additional regulations are provided in terms of distance requirements from sensitive uses. These appear appropriate and are similar to distance requirements from other sensitive uses, example, package stores. The language indicating how to measure the distance is also similar to language in other sections of the regulations. Vehicular access from an arterial or collector street is also appropriate and reduces the potential for traffic impacts on local roads. The proposed amendment also numerically places the use in the two zones, Section 5A and Section 5B, as a special exception use with reference to additional requirements, see below, and revises Sections 3C4, the references are appropriate. CG20 zone, Sections 5A, CA80 zone, Section 5B. In terms of the CG20 zone, two additional requirements are included. First, said use would not be allowed in the CG20 zone along Main Street, while the center of Danbury on Main Street is within the CBD zone. The northern and southern sections are zoned CG20. Secondly, such dispensaries would not be permitted to be accessible by a drive-through use, regardless of existing regulations that allow drive-through uses in the CG20 zone. The same prohibition regarding drive-through uses is also included in the CA80 zone to remove the possibility for any interpretation that the existing prohibition in sections 5B, 3B is not, for some reason, applicable to a medical marijuana dispensary. Plan of Conservation Development, POCD. The goal of the land development plan of the POCD is to develop patterns that accommodate growth without diminishing the quality of life of the city. This includes consideration of revisions to land use regulations to address changing development practices, POCD, page 13. The state's medical marijuana program has been in existence for 8 years and has itself been subject to several amendments. Strict licensing standards remain in place. Therefore, the commission could reasonably find that a zoning amendment to allow only 2 medical marijuana dispensaries in Danbury, subject to the proposed additional requirements coupled with the increasing needs of area residents to obtain medical marijuana products to manage debilitating illnesses and conditions, is consistent with the POCD. Conclusion. The regulatory landscape regarding the use of medical marijuana as well as recreational marijuana continues to evolve. For certain, the number of patients qualifying for medical marijuana use is increasing, as are the number of conditions for which its use is authorized and legal. While its status as a Schedule I controlled substance has not changed, state and local governments have changed their opinions, policies, and laws in regard to medical marijuana distribution and production. The number of states where it continues to be illegal, medicinally or recreationally, appears now to be in the clear minority. This amendment provides the city with an option to provide for a limited number of dispensaries that can be established and operate pragmatically in Danbury within the guidelines of state regulations while controlling where these facilities can locate. Again, the number of allowed dispensaries in this amendment is 2. The approval process proposed is also one that provides for the vetting of sites in a public hearing process before the Planning Commission. It also specifically excludes the sale of recreational marijuana within such dispensaries so as to limit exposure and consequences for this potential new legalized use. Given the above, the commission may reasonably conclude that allowing medical marijuana dispensaries within the CG20 and CA80 commercial zones subject to compliance with the additional conditions, as well as standard requirements for the issuance of a grant of special exception site plan approval, could now be appropriate. While not included in this amendment, staff advises that it may be prudent for the commission in the near future to consider adding a definition of recreational marijuana to address this use should there be any change in its legal status at the state level. Staff has no objection to this amendment. And then for the Planning Commission dated June 3rd, 2020, to Theodore J. Haddad Jr., Chairman, Danbury Commission, Danbury Zoning Commission, from Arnold E. Finaldo Jr., Danbury Chairman, Danbury Planning Commission, regarding 8.3a referral petition of DNB Wellness to amend sections 3C4, 5A2B, 5A5, 5B2B, 5B5 of the zoning regulations, medical marijuana dispensaries as a special exception in CG20 and CA80 zones. At the web-based Zoom meeting held on June 3rd, 2020, the City of Danbury Planning Commission voted to give the above reference petition a positive recommendation for the following reasons. 1, it limits the number of medical marijuana dispensaries that could be established within Danbury to 2, and provides specific use regulations that are appropriate for the special exception uses of CA80 and CG20 commercial zoning districts. 2, these 2 zones where medical marijuana dispensary facilities could be established currently allow retail sales. 3, the use is strictly regulated under the state's medical marijuana program, and all licensing and other operating requirements must be met by an applicant. 4, distancing requirements are included and must be met to ensure appropriate separation from sensitive uses. 5, the approval procedure provides for vetting of sites where a medical marijuana dispensary is proposed in a public hearing process before the Planning Commission. 6, the amendment specifically excludes the sale of recreational marijuana within such medical marijuana dispensaries so as to limit exposure and consequences for this potential new legalized use. 7, this amendment allowing only 2 medical marijuana dispensaries in Danbury subject to the proposed additional requirements coupled with the increasing needs of area residents to obtain medical marijuana products to manage the debilitating illnesses and conditions is consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development as it provides for a revision of the land use regulations to accommodate growth without diminishing the quality of life of the city. The motion to give this a positive recommendation was made by Mr. Salvain, seconded by Mr. Chioccio, and passed unanimously by roll call vote with ayes from Mr. Chioccio, Mrs. Hofstadter, Mr. Salvain, Mr. Urice, and Chairman Finaldi. Attorney Marcus, I believe you are representing this petition, so do you wish to speak in favor of this petition?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Neil Marcus, Conewall PC, 158 Deer Hill Avenue in Danbury. I'm not going.
Attorney Marcus, before you continue, I do just need to recognize that we did send this to Westcog for their recognition, and they did reply back that it's of local interest with minimal intermunicipal impact. I'm sorry, I forgot to admit that. Now the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Interestingly, I don't have a lot to add to Sharon Cletro's staff report. And part of the reason for that is that we worked with the department for a long time in developing a proposed amendment that could get their support and that made sense for what we're trying to accomplish. And a little history, I was involved with the Bethel facility. That's my client from years ago. It's existing on Gorilla Road. And that facility located on Gorilla Road because the Fairfield County was given a certain number of license opportunities from the state Department of Consumer Protection for this brand new medical marijuana program that had come into existence. And all of the towns, Danbury included, didn't know quite what to do about medical marijuana. Marijuana had a stigma and the medical was sort of forgotten, and everybody kind of had an adverse reaction. And quickly, people either had moratoriums, I think we did in Danbury for a while, and then regulations were slowly passed. Meanwhile, we did get approved in the town of Bethel early on. They had no prohibition. And however, that approval was challenged. So there was a lengthy hearing before the Bethel ZBA when I got to really understand the medical marijuana program because I was presenting it to that commission. And quite honestly, I had no idea myself. I mean, I remembered marijuana from my crazy college days when it was becoming a fashionable alternative to alcohol. But medical marijuana is in fact an old time miracle drug. And the people who came out in Bethel in support of the program were incredible. I mean, it was people who, some of them had trouble walking in to get to the hearing to speak in favor because none of the commission members, and certainly the applicant's attorney, had any idea how seriously ill and how seriously impacted some of these users were who were benefiting from the medical marijuana program. So I was sold then that it was a great idea, and the program in Bethel has been very successful. That's why we're here in Danbury trying to relocate to a larger and actually a better located facility in terms of access to traffic. So the plan is to move to Danbury if we can amend the regulations and ultimately get a special permit, special exception. But the Danbury regulation that's on the books right now reflects the fact that Danbury was going to allow medical marijuana, but really felt it should be part of what I'll call a standard pharmacy, because the current Danbury reg requires medical marijuana to be sold in connection with other types of patent drugs, prescription drugs, whatever, shampoos and and deodorants, basically other products. I knew from my experience in Bethel that the Department of Consumer Protection absolutely would never license a facility that wasn't limited to the sale of medical marijuana and specifically related products. We went through that in Bethel is to try to expand the product line. It's difficult, but the reason for that was that they didn't want people wandering into a medical marijuana pharmacy who didn't belong there. You had to have your ID card, and to get through the front door, there was real security. I mean, it was. I make fun of the fact one day I stopped at the Bethel location to get some papers signed by my clients, and the people at the front door weren't going to let me into the building because I didn't have a card. And it took some intercession by my client to say, yes, I just have to sign some documents. But they were very strict on security. And so the Danbury reg that we've lived with all these years has really prevented the existence of a medical marijuana pharmacy in Danbury because it will never be licensed by the state. So early on, I gave the department, Sharon and Jennifer, some of my research on the requirements to get a state license. But better than that, they actually met with the department and talked to the commissioner and the people that were in charge, and got firsthand what I was trying to explain. That, and the result of that is in this report. And the report summarizes where the city should be and can be with the amendment to the regulation. We took pains to be very careful to limit this. I mean, Sharon has already pointed out in the staff report, you know, there are only going to be 2 of these in Danbury. We're not going to have a host of them, even if the state opens up the licensing. We're not going to allow them to be in areas where we feel they are inappropriate, even in the CG20 zone. So we talked about the Main Street limitations, and we're certainly not going to have a drive-through. Even though, ironically, I agree to that. And Sharon's smiling, I can see. Ironically, some of the people that have to walk into the pharmacy could probably benefit by a drive-through. But for all sorts of control reasons, it probably makes sense to not have drive-throughs. So we're not going to have drive-throughs. We're going to control and limit. And I'm seriously of the mind that medical marijuana is in fact something that is a terrific benefit for those people who qualify. They have expanded recently the number of types of illness and disease that it can apply to. It as Sharon said, in one form or another, it is accepted in almost every state in the union. There's a small group of exceptions, but it's very small. So I think it's important for us in the city of Danbury to recognize that we have a duty, I think, to people who need this type of pharmaceutical to be able to buy it locally. And this regulation will allow it. Carl Torella was on the phone, or was on the Zoom earlier. Hopefully he's still awake and with us, and he's available to answer any operational questions. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the language of the reg. But as I say, the staff report sums it up and comes up with a conclusion that is where I am, that the staff does not object. We are adamantly in favor, or strongly in favor of this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Marcus. Do we have any questions for Attorney Marcus from commission members?
I'm looking. I don't see anybody.
Annie, I think I can about everybody on the screen.
Okay, can I just, for the record, Mr. Chairman, and the applicant did submit, I think there are 9 letters of support. They're part of the record already. They were on the agenda, so I don't think it's necessary to read them into the record because they actually are in the official record. And they were listed on the agenda if you wanted to, if you want me to read them, I can read them.
I will leave that up to Attorney Marcus. Attorney Marcus, would you like those letters of support read into the record? They're part of the record.
Mr. Chair, they were given to the commission members, so you've been able to read them as part of the record. I mean, they're also straightforward and simple that at this hour of the night, I'm not sure you have to read them, but they tell you the reasons that the various writers are in support of this. And again, as I say, going back to my experience in Bethel, we had literally 30 or 40 people speak to the commission in person and give them their medical life story that led them to the use of medical marijuana, and then a story of how it has changed their ability to function. And those letters that you've got, basically, I'm going to summarize, say the same thing, that these are people whose lives have been positively impacted by the availability and would be happy to see this available in Danbury in a location that's a little more convenient for them.
Okay.
So I'll waive the reading.
Thank you, Attorney. I was going to say, since we actually had them in our packet to read prior to the meeting, so I'm just going to, we'll note that we do have 9 letters of support. And at this time, I'll ask if there's anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition. Sharon, I don't know if you have to unmute.
Councilman Rotello is waving his hand.
Okay.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Rotello, 13 Linden Place, Danbury, Connecticut. I had a string of puns that I was going to shower upon the good people on the commission, a symphony of synonyms for this particular issue. But, you know, recent events have brought home the fact that there's nothing, it's good to maintain a sense of humor, but there's nothing particularly funny about what this new law is trying to address. And while it may be true that having to go to Bethel is not a particular hardship, I mean, I'm in Bethel several times a week just to get ice cream at Dr. Mike's, and that's my position. There really is no reason at this point that we cannot have a dispensary or 2 in Danbury. This is a chance for the commission to revisit a past decision in a more positive light. I'm not particularly thrilled about the non-drive-through. Again, present circumstances have shown us that for the immunocompromised, staying as far from people as they possibly can, and that, you know, does not include wearing masks and 6 feet apart. I mean, really sealing themselves off from people as much as they possibly can is not just good sense, but it is a matter of life and death. And to be able to sit in one's car and go to a dispensary, much like one would sit in one's car and get a nasal swab for a COVID test, is more than just a convenience. It is perhaps a necessity. So I would hope at some point in the future, I mean, I would like to see this passed, but I would hope that at some point in the future, that could be revisited. Just as a side note, I'm not particularly sure that the state, if and when, let's just say when, they finally allow retail sales, will allow cities to, the cities will have a lot of discretion, but I'm not sure that they would actually allow cities to disallow retail sales out of a existing prescription marijuana facility. Massachusetts did not do that. They had to be separate, but they could still be sold out of the same building. So the Planning Commission may want to take that into account when they get around to locating these 1 or 2 facilities, you know, down the road. They may wind up actually serving the retail recreational market as well. But look, this is a great idea. It's a long time coming. Neil's comment about being on the other side, the early side of the explosion of recreational marijuana use in the 60s and 70s is humorous. But at this point, it's an established drug. There should no longer be any kind of a prejudice about using it or even selling it. And I would like to see the day come when it's simply sold alongside other nostrums like aspirin and other things like that in a regular retail environment where you just walk in and you get your marijuana prescription or you get your COVID vaccine or your flu vaccine or whatever. So yeah, I'm fully behind this. It's a long time coming, and the fact that Danbury does not have an allowance for dispensaries is something that really does need to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rotella. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
Mr. Chairman Malillo, Councilman Alves would like to speak.
Councilman Alves.
Thank you. For the record, Roberto Alves, 7 West Reading Road. I will save everybody any long words here, and I really just want to echo what my colleague and leadership on the council just said, pretty much verbatim. I think we are past due. The drive-through would be a good idea. I think the future is going to, we're going to move into an area where people are going to go to less contact, and if we can revisit that, if we see a need or demand to have the drive-through where people can come in, limit contact with others. I think that's a great idea, Paul. Thank you for putting that on the record as well. And again, also the fact that we have the opening there for the inevitable, however far down the line, when the retail sales are going. Again, thank you, everybody. Just wanted to put my voice on support on the record.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alves. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Ms. Calitro, I don't see any. Does anybody have their hands up?
I don't see anyone with their hands up, no.
Okay, is anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Is anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Is anybody here to speak in opposition to this petition? Ms. Calitro, I don't see any. Is there none?
No, I see no one trying to wave or
Okay,
with their hand up.
And I want to confirm for the record that we have received no other emails in favor of support of this petition.
That's correct, no.
Thank you. Ms. Calitro, do you have any staff comments?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Attorney Marcus, do you have any rebuttal comments?
Hard to have a rebuttal when there's no opposition. I just want to thank the commission for their time. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Marcus. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to close or continue the public hearing. Motion to close by Commissioner Almeida, seconded by Commissioner Massey. Discussion on closing the public hearing. Okay, again, we'll do a roll call vote on closing the public hearing. Commissioner Almeida.
Yes, close.
Commissioner Massey.
Yes.
Commissioner Jowdy.
Yes.
Commissioner Hylinski.
Yes.
Commissioner Fay. Okay, Commissioner Hawley.
Yes.
Commissioner Merchan.
Yes.
Commissioner Haddad.
Yes.
I too will vote yes. We will close the public hearing 8-0 with 1 member not voting. At this time, do we wish to move this to item number 2 under old business? Commissioner Massey. Okay, moved by Commissioner Massey, seconded by Commissioner Jowdy. Discussion. Again, this is administrative.
I would vote. I would vote.
Okay.
Somebody's not muted.
Yeah. So, okay, so all those in favor of moving this to item number 2 under old business for discussion and possible action, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record reflect it passed unanimously with a voice vote. Moving on to public hearing number 4, the application of Ingersoll Auto of Danbury, 3 and 5-7 Morgan Avenue, lots K11046 and K12165 for a certificate of location approval for a motor vehicle general repairs license in the IL40 CG20 zones. Again, let the record reflect the legal notice has been read into the record at the beginning of this meeting. There's nothing else to read. So at this time, is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, good evening, Chairman, members of the Zoning Commission. My name is Benjamin Dodo. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Ingersoll Auto of Danbury. The subject piece we're here for today is a certificate of location approval for a general repairs license. Ingersoll Auto is currently located at 84 Federal Road. I think everybody's familiar with the location. This particular site, 3 and then 5 to 7 Morgan, is where Ingersoll currently stores their vehicles, sort of when you come in the main entrance to Ingersoll Auto, to the left of the building, on that gravel lot there between Federal Road and Morgan Ave. A year or two ago, Mr. Ingersoll purchased 3 Morgan Avenue. It was a house that was beyond repair. It was damaged in a fire. Mr. Ingersoll purchased it, tore the house down. So our proposal right now is to construct a 5,800 square foot building that sort of straddles both of those parcels. Both of those former parcels. Those lots have since been combined, as was required in our site plan approval as a condition. The property is in the both CG and IL 40 zones. This use is permitted in both zones. We received site plan approval back in April. And this building will be sort of a mixed use building. It's going to serve for some storage, some accessory vehicle prep, and there will be 2 service bays in this building. So it's basically going to be part of the existing facility. It's at a different location in its own standalone building. So that's why we're here today. And it's not going to be for customer access. It's really just an overflow bay. So if a vehicle happens to get repaired there, it's going to be no different than for the customer. The customer is still going to go to the 84 building, go to the service place, have it written up, and it's just an overflow bay. I'm going to try to share my screen now. If that's okay, Sharon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can everyone see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Federal Road is over here. Here's Morgan Avenue, right here. Number 3 is right here. This is where the house was that I described that burned down. This is in the IL 40 zone. 5 to 7 is up here. This is where the car storage lot currently is right now. This lot line has been removed. That was filed as town clerk map number 13625. The proposal is to, I'm going to zoom in here only because we're looking at 2 properties, is to construct the building right here. All the doors of the building are along this side of the building, and they're going to face the Modulewski properties and Federal Road. There'll be a couple garage door buildings here. The access will be through the existing storage lot. The building is set back, the appropriate setback from Morgan Avenue. There's currently a driveway right here and a gate for those of you that are familiar with it. That gate, as part of the original approval, is to be normally closed and locked. It's not for auto deliveries. It's not for service. It's only to be open for maintenance purposes. It's not for customers to use. So that will remain as it is, and that's part of the condition as well. So again, this property will serve that direction. Part of the approval also included a landscape plan. I'm going to zoom in on here. It's spun around a little bit. This was prepared by Ellen Hines, our landscape architect. Again, here's Morgan Avenue right here. Here's the auto storage lot. Here are the Modulewski properties. And here's Morgan Avenue over on this side. The building, as I mentioned, is set right here with all the doors facing that way. The whole front yard is going to be heavily landscaped. There's actually been some effort we worked with the city on this. There's an existing 42-inch maple tree there. So as you can see, we're picking up where the sidewalk left off when the storage lot was done. The sidewalk is getting extended across the frontage. The existing single-family driveway, which is right here, This is the former driveway to the house. That's getting closed and curbed with the sidewalk going across that as well. And the whole property in the front being landscaped. As I had mentioned, this has already received site plan approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Dodo? Okay, I don't see any questions from commission members. So is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there any, Ms. Calitro, have you seen anybody?
No,
Have we received any letters in favor of the emails?
no,
Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Anybody speaking in opposition to this petition? Anybody speaking in opposition to this petition? Don't see any. And Ms. Calitro, we have no emails in opposition.
no,
Ms. Calitro, do we have any staff comments?
no, we do not. I do
Mr.
not.
Dodo, do you have a rebuttal comments?
No, sir.
Okay, at this time, I will entertain a motion to close or continue the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Motion to close by Commissioner Hylinski, seconded by Commissioner Almeida. Discussion. A yes to close and no would not to be to close. Commissioner Hylinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Almeida,
Yes.
Commissioner Haddad,
Yes.
Commissioner Merchan.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Commissioner Jowdy,
Yes.
Commissioner Fay,
Yes.
Commissioner Massey,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hawley.
Yes.
Okay, public hearing's closed. Do we wish to move this item number 3 under old business? Motion to move this to item number 3 by
And he's like, look at these things.
Hold on one sec. I'm trying to figure out who that is.
Who's not muted?
It's only us on. There's only 19 of us on and almost everybody's muted.
Okay, so we have a motion to move this to item number 3 by Commissioner Almeida, seconded by
I'll second.
Commissioner Haddad. Discussion. All those in favor of moving this to item number 3, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? This passes with a voice vote. Bringing us to item number 1 under old business for discussion and possible action. This is the application of Fast Lane Auto Repair LLC, Payne Road Investments LLC, 60 Payne Road, lot number N12001 for a certificate of location approval for a motor vehicle general repairs license in the IG 80 zone. I will note now, as well as at the end of the meeting, that these decisions, if we approve them tonight, will become effective the day after the decision and being posted with the town clerk's office in accordance with the executive order issued by the governor. So with that, I will entertain a motion to either approve or to deny. We just need to find that it will not have a negative impact on the neighborhood.
A motion to approve because it does not have a negative impact on the neighborhood.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Massey, seconded by, do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Jowdy. He was waving up there. Okay, discussion. Okay, a motion to approve. Commissioner Massey,
Yes.
Commissioner Jowdy,
Yes.
Commissioner Hylinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Fay,
No,
Commissioner Hawley,
Yes.
Commissioner Almeida,
Yes.
Commissioner Haddad,
Yes.
Commissioner Merchan,
Yes.
and I'm going to vote yes. Passes 8-1. Congratulations, Attorney Marcus. Touch base with the office. I'm not sure what the parameters are right now about getting those forms signed, but I'm sure they will reach out to you.
Thank you. I'll
Okay.
I'll check back in with them.
Okay, item number 2. This is the petition of D&B Wellness to amend sections 3C4, 5A2B, 5A5, 5B2B, 5B5 of the zoning regulations, medical marijuana dispensaries a special exception in CG 20 and CA 80 zones. So, Ms. Calitra, do you want to remind us as to what we have to find on this one, or we good with the planning commission recommendations, or?
Yeah, I mean, consistency with the plan, yeah, you can, if you want, repeat the planning commission recommendations as well. No, not a substantial, no impact to the health, safety, and welfare, and the conditions are appropriate, limits the number within the city. I think those are all appropriate reasons.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Calitra. This time we'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Massey? No, I think, okay, Commissioner Almeida.
Almeida.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve. I don't think this is going to have any adverse impact, and it's a long time coming.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Almeida, seconded by Commissioner Hawley. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, which item is this?
Medical
D&B.
marijuana.
Yeah.
Medical marijuana. Okay, thank you.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that is, that feedback.
Okay.
It's odd.
Any discussion? Okay. So a yes vote will be to approve, a no vote will be to deny.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm just going to mute everybody and then we'll unmute ourselves. See if I could stop that. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Now I'm going to go through and unmute everybody. You can unmute yourselves, actually, just the commissioners. I got Rob.
Sit here.
Wow. I'm going to mute you, Joe. Ricky, hold on. Ryan, Sydney, Mike, Candace. Nelson, can you hear us? Okay, he's unmuted. Ricky, you unmuted? I would just. That is so bizarre because I have no idea where that noise is coming from. I think you're okay. Why don't you call the vote?
Okay. Commissioner Almeida.
Yes.
Commissioner Jowdy.
Yes.
Commissioner Hylinski.
Yes.
Commissioner Fay.
No.
Commissioner Massey.
No.
Commissioner Hawley.
Yes.
Commissioner Haddad.
Yes.
Commissioner Merchan.
Yes.
And I'm voting no. This passes 6-3. Okay. Congratulations, Attorney Marcus. You can let your client know that they can contact the office to make sure to see what they need to do to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Thank you, commissioners. Good to see some old faces, the old familiar faces. Hopefully everybody stays healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Marcus. And finally, we have the application of Ingersoll Auto of Danbury, 3 and 5-7 Morgan Avenue, lots K11046 and K12165 for a certificate of location approval for a motor vehicle general repairs license in the IL40 CG20 zones. Again, here we just need to simply find that it will not have a detrimental impact on the neighborhood. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Approved by Commissioner Massey, seconded by Commissioner Fay. Discussion. Okay, a yes vote will be to approve and no vote will be to deny. Commissioner Massey.
Yes.
Commissioner Fay.
Yes.
Commissioner Hylinski.
Yes.
Commissioner Jowdy.
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley.
Yes.
Commissioner Almeida. Commissioner Almeida.
He's muted.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Haddad.
Yes.
Commissioner Merchan.
Yes.
I too will vote yes. This passes 9-0. Congratulations, Mr. Bodo. Let Ingersoll Auto know that we wish them well with their expansion.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
And again, just let the record reflect that these will become effective after our vote and upon publication the next day and upon publication in the town clerk's office.
Okay.
We have nothing listed under new business. We have nothing listed under correspondence. We have nothing listed under other matters. For reference only, we have the petition of BRT Sconset LLC to add sections 4.1 to the zoning regulations, create active adult residential floating zone, AAR. Zoning Commission public hearings rescheduled for June 23rd. This date is subject to change depending on circumstances related to COVID-19. The petition of Sugar Hollow Land Development LLC to amend sections 6A2B and 6A5 of the zoning regulations, add sale, rental, and repair of automobiles and trucks to the IL40 zone as a special exception use. That public hearing is scheduled for July 28th, 2020. That date is also subject to change depending on circumstances related to COVID-19. That brings us to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for tonight. Thank you for the rest of the commission for your patience. I unexpectedly did not make it, as you know, for the beginning of the meeting. So I apologize for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Haddad. We hope everything was okay. There wasn't any
My head is killing me. My eyes are killing me. My teeth are killing me.
So it's a normal day for you.
No, it was unexpected today.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Glad to see you, Ted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I know it was a later night, but at least we're in the comfort of our homes, I think. A couple of you may not be. I'm not sure what the background looks like there. But I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Commissioner Fay, seconded by Commissioner Massey. Discussion. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carries unanimously and we're adjourned.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Candace, thank you for the card.